All right. Okay, guys. So just again, a quick note here. We'll have our guest speaker. I'm going to call him at 7:30 to get him on here. He's in Tennessee. But I was just making a preliminary statement here for everybody that sees this video out there in internet world. Was doing a bunch of videos years ago for the bigvirushoax.com. I'm going to stop mentioning that as well. I'm going to stop talking about that website name, as well as certain things that are sharp metal things that go into people's arms and put poisons in them. Anything relative to that. I lost my YouTube account. I lost my Facebook account. I lost my Twitter account. I lost my TikTok account during the plan.
I
And
need to.
so, yeah, I want to do everything I can to not have any videos. I believe you know, shouldn't have any issues, even with YouTube, but we're just talking about posterity and the Constitution. It's all law, it's all true, it's all real. As long as we're not talking about anything having to do with the V word, sounds like this girl I know named Maxine, except it starts with a V. Um, and, talking about anything having to do with the doctors and the hospitals and the MEDICAL issues, right? Talk about that stuff. It's not in accordance with their agenda. They're taking you down. So I'm going to try to avoid that. Pretty much keep all my videos now just talking about rights and the Constitution and posterity, the difference between a 14th Amendment citizen, who they are, what they are, as far as the government is concerned, sovereignty, all of those issues. And it's kind of nevertheless resuming videos that were being done with the TBVH and Righteous Army, the efforts we were putting forth through 2022, 2023 to try to get Americans to organize county to county, state to state throughout the United States so that we had each other's back, so to speak, so that we could build an organization, righteousarmy.org. So those two websites, of course, are still up and they will forever be up. Like I said, it's an actual factual, truthful statement to say that the big virus hoax, HOAX, the bigvirushoax.com and righteousarmy.org are the two number one greatest, most significant, important, valuable websites on the internet. That's a fact. But now with TAPS, which is True American Posterity Sovereigns Private Member Association, taps-pma.com or .org, we're going to be talking mainly about our rights as human beings, sovereignty, what that means, 14th Amendment citizenship, what that means, international law, common law. So we're going to be addressing these issues and really fine tuning them. The Republic for the United States of America, where they went wrong, what they need to do to correct their errors. And we'll have a few guest speakers come on from time to time. And some of them are really not in the public eye like I have been and like some of us have been. They're private people and they want to stay that way. So I'll try to get their permission to record and just keep their names and locations out of it. But I'm also going to want to try to identify whoever's on the meetings, at least by name, if not by show of face and where they're at. I want to kind of be aware of who's on, even though anybody's welcome to come on to these meetings. So that's kind of where we're at now, taking over again. Every Tuesday at 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. Eastern time, we'll be doing our Zoom meetings again. So we all have a place to go. As I mentioned earlier, I admit that during 2020, 21, 22, 23, because of everything that I was convicted of and pursuing in earnest, when I was doing the Zoom meetings, not everybody, but some people criticized me as being just talking, talking, talking. And that's because I had so much on my mind that I wanted to share that I just had to get it out. But no need for me to do that anymore because I've got it all out with everything I've done. So we're going to have it where everybody will be muted. We'll have, raise your hand if you have something you want to say. Anybody's welcome to come on and share what they have to say, and I'll kind of moderate that. And again, get our guest speakers to come on and help us navigate these very important issues. So having said that, Clinton, you were, I started recording when Clinton was mentioning a couple of things that I think are important. Clinton, you mentioned that you think people are starting to wake up now, and you've been doing a lot of research on your own as well that's concurs with what we're talking about.
Most
So
definitely. All you got to do is just Google state citizen and start from there, and all kinds of stuff will lead you uh, to case laws and Supreme Court cases and all kinds of stuff. So it's definitely out there. It's a lot to it to understand, but the more I dig into it, the more I understand it a little bit. So it's definitely out there, and it definitely exists. So we're not chasing our tail or nothing.
I appreciate that. And of course, Tave is here with us right now. Tave, from the beginning, has been, to me, he's the best example of an American who, was just like everybody else, saw what was going on, was in the mix of possibly going down the same road as everybody else and standing in line to do what people were being told to do. But fortunately, he saw some information that was put out. He's given me a lot of credit, and I appreciate it. I'm not in this for my own glory, but I'll certainly take credit where credit's due. I often joke with people and tell them Florida is free because of me. We all know that Florida was the first state to become free, and everything that I ever published at thebigvirushoax.com was force fed via text, via email, via Twitter, via Facebook to Governor Ron DeSantis. And on 4 occasions, he came out within a week of the stuff we were throwing at him, like daily, every day, just force feeding it to him multiple times throughout the day, every day, putting it on his Facebook, putting it on his pictures, responding to his Twitters, sending it through his email 2-3 times a day to his staff. And 4 times he came out in the mainstream local media news, Florida news, talking about those very issues that we were throwing at him. And we did become the first state that freed up, as far as saying children don't have to, don face diapers. People cannot be forced to get the jab. People cannot be losing their jobs. We have rights. So he did come out on those issues. But, Tave, even though you give me credit and I appreciate it, and I'm glad you got information, coming to the meetings and off the website, but you really impressed me, brother, man, is a man that just started doing his own research on top of it. He's probably never missed one meeting, not only between mine, but when I stopped, Joseph Gibson with the Republic for the United States of America was doing their radio show for 10 years. So when I ceased doing my regular videos every week, Tay was over there. He was with Joseph on his blog talk. He was always there. He's shown true commitment, and he's learned a lot of things. Sometimes he goes down what many people consider rabbit holes. And there are a lot of rabbit holes, but he's not afraid to go down them. And he's looking into every angle, he's turned his life around, given his life over to God Almighty, puts his faith and trust in the creator Lord God Almighty. Like myself and many of us, we came into this world, what's that, Glenn?
He's definitely a patriot. I mean, I've heard his voice, and I've never met him, but I've heard him on multiple podcasts, and I've heard him different places. He is definitely a full patriot for sure. He's a real thing. There's a lot of people out here pretending to be something they're not, but he's the real deal. Because I've witnessed him talking in several podcasts because I got my own podcast, and so I listen to other podcasts, and it was because of you turned me on to Joe, and then Joe gave me enough courage for me to speak out with my own podcast. And with that podcast, made me easier to go out in public now and just say what I feel like I need to say. Because before then, I didn't. I was a little too shy to do it. But all that, and it all started with you because when I got involved with the Righteous Army, and I would have never found Joe if it wasn't for you. And then so it leads down, all leads down to that same path.
Yeah, absolutely,
So
Clinton. I was just going to say,
you influence a lot of people you don't know you do, but you do. You
right,
know.
I do, and then the ones I influence, like you guys influence. And I was going to lead right from Tave to you, Clinton, because I was going to say it's ironic that you two guys are the first you guys to come on the meeting tonight because you two have shown the most in terms of commitment and always being there and stepping it up. And I was going to mention it, and you just mentioned it that you got involved even with doing your own podcast, sending out your emails. And we were talking earlier, Clinton, about how you guys there was a handful of you guys in North Carolina. You guys had your own Zoom meetings going in North Carolina, which fizzled out, but you're there. Clinton's a go-to man in North Carolina. And I guess just for the record, Clinton, if you want to throw out any information or contact info for anybody that might be in
Well,
your area.
I've been printing out Righteous Army stuff and giving them to all my buddies so they can check it out on their own, do their own research. Because I feel like that a lot of my friends that when they ask me about it, then they're ready to do the research themselves. So I just lead them down the path. So I've been giving them a lot of Righteous Army stuff so they can check it out. You know, Joe's got a great podcast. You can learn a lot from his podcast. I think it's Saving the Republic is the name of his. And then, of course, mine is We the People of America. And my podcast is really so we could all try to understand each other as Americans, no matter what political side we're on. Sometimes we just want to talk over each other when we need to learn more so we might understand how some people feel the way they feel because we're all in the same boat.
Right on. And are you still doing your podcast now?
Well, where I was doing it shut down, so I haven't found a place where I feel comfortable doing it yet. I've tried a couple of different sites. Uh, so I got a buddy of mine that's supposed to come and help me show me how to do this one site this week, and hopefully it'll work out.
All right. Well, you can use this platform, brother, too. If you ever feel you have certain people or guests, or you want to throw out an invite and say I'm doing a show, this can be your show. We can say, hey, our guest speaker tonight's Clinton, and you can be the man. So feel free to use this because I think you're right. You were using Blog Talk too, right, for your podcast?
Yeah, yes, I
Right.
was. Yep.
And they shut that down, I believe, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. All right, Tave, I see your hand there, brother. What do you got, my man?
I just wanted to say thanks. And, you know, for everybody out there that's listening or ever does listen, I was that normal guy that just was, following, like Mike said, the normal path. And when you start to realize the severity of what's happened with our government, what they've turned into and turned against us, everything that you were taught in school is basically wrong when you start to research it. And many things aren't conspiracy theory anymore. It's conspiracy fact.
Yep.
And the worst part about it is so many people still haven't woken up to it. And we're in a race right now that's going to be hard to overcome with any level you want to look at it, because I believe that if we've lost at least a generation of kids to the sickness that come through and kept everybody out of school, number one. And then at the same time, we had the indoctrination of the curriculum in the schools. Where is a plan? And when people start to realize, because I do believe that they're waking up to it, but they still just aren't aware of how severe it is. And I just emphasize dramatically, and I can't put a big enough exclamation point on it, to look into that, especially for the children, because I don't have any kids, and I'm doing this for my nieces and everybody else's kids, because if it's not turned around quickly, we're going to lose everything. And it's disheartening, and we have to make it understood that these people that have done this have to be held accountable, and we have to fix it. We have to fix it. We have to start this process for these kids. We just can't let it continue to go on, because at the rate that it is, even with Trump in there, everybody thinks he's doing his deportation stuff. They're still coming across, and there's still over 15 million of them here. So I appreciate everything that you've done, Mike. You woke me up, saw everything, and your boy, everybody, all you guys. This is a tight knit group. I want to say that has definitely stuck together, at least through just our voices. But it's the idea that if we had to reach out to one another for anything, we could do that. And I believe that amongst us, where a lot of the division that goes on in the country, you don't have that, but we have that here, and I appreciate it. And I yield.
Yeah, thanks, brother. And just want to clarify, because I know but sometimes when we say things, other people will be listening to the video and they'll say, where are these guys coming from? You mentioned sickness. I want to let you clarify what you meant by that when you talked about the children and you said when the sickness came on.
The COVID, when the
Right.
COVID was the fake, everything that was brought upon us to try to keep us in our homes and basically under lock and key like they have Wuhan, China.
Right. And let me just say, and then you can just simply say if you concur or not. And again, I want to be delicate in my videos now. Again, all the information regarding this is at the website, the big virus hoax, HOAX.com. It's all there.
All there.
So with regards to sickness, let me just say it like this, and you can say if this is what you meant and you agree. They're creating it in laboratories.
I concur.
And it can more accurately be described as a biological weapon.
Warfare.
Yep.
I concur. It's a biological weapon.
Right.
It's warfare.
Right. And that would be both. And this is complex. See, this is, again, doing my best that for this video to not have to be another one they take down. But there's so much we can talk about that would have this video taken down. I don't want it to be taken down. So let's just go with enough people know. I just wanted to get that clarification that we here know. I knew, and that's why I just wanted to get the clarification with when Tape said sickness. He was just talking about what they've put out there into the atmosphere, into the food, into the water, into the jabs that are purposefully intended to thin out the world's mass of persons.
I concur to that. Yes.
Yep. Me too.
Yeah. And again, Clinton's in North Carolina, Taves in Ohio. We have, a handful of others that are connected with us in North Carolina and in Ohio, and really in a lot of the other states. Do you guys think you're going to have any questions tonight for Grant in Tennessee that you might want to ask regarding his knowledge of, confirming and verifying that, in fact, there are millions of people in this country right now who are bloodline related to the founding fathers, the original colonialists, the posterity of we the people. We the people created this nation. They created it for themselves and their posterity. And via the Treaty of Paris, they're locked in. They are locked in. They created it for all rights, privileges, and immunities. Go to them and go to them alone. Now, again, that doesn't exclude that there are treaties that the Republic of the United States of America had with other groups of people. Something interesting came up today. My son said he saw something where Trump was saying that the American Indians are not 14th Amendment citizens. They have no, he's out welding right now, but I'd love for him to come in and address this himself. I'm paraphrasing what he said, that a friend of his on Facebook who happens to be related to the Miccosukee Indians was kind of upset. And she wrote a Facebook saying, Trump is saying that we Indians are no longer part of the United States and we're not 14th Amendment citizens. And to make a long story short, my son kind of articulated extremely well some
she's not a
court
14th
cases,
citizen.
right, that they're not, and they should be saying, hey, this is probably a good thing, not a bad thing. Trump, that's a sign that Trump is telling them that they're sovereign.
That's right.
And they are
100%.
Yeah, so we'll address that again later too. I'm going to go ahead and call
And
Let me
Grant's the same person that talked last time.
What's that?
He's the same person that was talking last time.
Yeah, I'm going to tell
Okay.
Alex to come on. I'm going to let her know I'm calling him now.
Hey, the only thing I was going to ask anything about with the grant, Mike, would have been, is there any way we can get any clarification, maybe in some documents, maybe that the actual treaties that we know of that we can reference, whether or not something changed from one treaty to the next treaty, or how it how it funnels down, and just exactly who it entails. It doesn't have to be specific, but just in a more of like a grouping, like I said, I chased down the Indian thing, and that they did make deals and treaties with the indigenous people, which put them in a position to be part of this. And uh, just to clarify it more, because I've had a lot of people come
Yeah,
at me on X and they challenge that, and they say, "Well, no, I'm full of shit." And I'm like, "Well, listen, I'm not going to argue with you." I said, "Until I get full clarification, but understand one thing." I said, "Everything that you think you knew, you're probably wrong about. Number one, number two." I said, "There's people that have direct lineage to the people that founded this country from Europe," and I said, "That's where it's going to be." And I said, this is where it all starts. I said, "It won't even have to do anything with the Supreme Court. This is going to go across the pond again, because that's where it starts at, because that's how we attained this land, is by the deal with the king."
right.
So and it's just like that. But just if he had any type of
Yeah, no, if you any questions you have, man, he's going to be good
a
at answering.
ledger, that's
Oh,
it. That's all
let
I
me
would
say
ask.
hi. Let me say hello, greetings to Nick there, man. Nick in Texas, the militia guy. Thanks for coming on, Nick. Again, Nick's a righteous man and a patriot who was joining in on all the meetings we were talking about earlier. And he's always there too. He's got his own programs going, and he's there. He's in the line. He's on the tree of life with us, fighting the good fight. So thanks for coming in. You want to say a word, Nick?
A word.
What's going on?
I'm just lurking.
All right, man. We appreciate you.
I was here. I caught the last I don't know, hour last week maybe.
Okay.
And I'm just here for about maybe 30 minutes. I got some stuff going on later, but just hopefully you'll get a bunch more participants. I know you had a bunch more last time.
Yeah, well, it'll pick up. As you know, Nick, I just started back with this,
Right.
just a couple weeks ago. So putting the word out, it'll grow again. And like I was telling the guys earlier, I've done all I can do at this point. So as it starts to grow again, I'm going to take an approach now of just having everybody be muted and say, raise your hand if you have something to say. And aside from any guest speakers that we might have come on, people can raise hands, ask
Great.
questions. And
I'm surprised. I'm surprised you're back at it again. I'm about to later this year. I've given up on Texas. I can't find a campaign manager to run for governor in 2 years or next year. So I think I'm going to move to Catholic, quite several thousand Catholic community in Kansas, and see if they want to do militia and the old income tax stuff. And I don't know if I'd run for governor in Kansas, but there's people there that are supposedly patriots, but I thought I'd find some in Texas, but sad to say.
Yeah. Pretty.
But I appreciate you keeping me posted.
Yep. Sure thing. Alexandra's going to come on here in a minute. She just texted me. I'm going to wait for her to come on, and then I'm going to call Grant just to cover a couple issues. I know she has a few questions for him. Sounds like Tave might as well. But again, just to reiterate, just for us that are here, and really mainly for the sake of the video, anybody that might be watching this video on YouTube or any other platform, there are millions of people within the United States of America who do not know who they are. They might know, oh yeah, man, my relatives go back, to the forefathers. But it's just in passing for them. Like they think it's irrelevant when it's hugely significant. the only people per law and treaty, per the law, the treaty, and Supreme Court rulings, the only people that are entitled, and I don't like using that word, the people that have access lawfully to all rights, privileges, and immunities are bloodline posterity. They're the only ones that can re-inhabit the republic in terms of re-inhabiting the seats and running that government. It's their nation. The United States of America, the soil, this land is ours. That federal territorial overlay is the fiction that the government really unlawfully created in many ways. And that's being addressed now on a couple of different fronts. And we're definitely going to be taking the lead on that. It says the meeting doesn't exist. You guys came on.
She's using the old link, I think.
Right. Let me just send her the text again. Sure, I sent it to her. Don't use the old link. I just sent you the new one that works. Yeah, did any of you guys use the link that I sent out today? That one works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I don't use it. I just lock mine into Zoom and then I just go back into it.
I used it.
You used it, Clinton? And Nick?
Yeah.
Nick,
I just put it in the U.S. up to the question mark, I guess.
Right.
And then and then I put in the meeting and it asked for the meeting ID and the password. So
okay.
I don't use my phone for anything other than talk and text. So right. I have to type stuff into my desktop. And anyway, but yeah, I was able. No issue. I didn't go to your the big virus hoax,
right?
To see whether that would be easier than what I did. But
yeah, she should really get on with the one I sent out. If not, man, that's going to be a drag. If they should be working. Let me double check here. The meeting ID. Where's meeting info? Right here. Meeting info. Yeah, Tutu. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's what I sent out. So
I used that one, Mike, that's on the front of the TAPS homepage and just locked it into my Zoom, once I got into the actual Zoom app. And that's the one I used from the beginning.
Huh. Yeah.
What do you call these meetings? Other than Zoom meetings. I mean, what I'm doing is
I would just call them TAPS.
Business
TAPS.
Okay.
Yeah. And that stands for True American Posterity Sovereigns. So TAPS, that's what I'm going to go with.
I know that I know I bookmarked the website. So
I'm going to call Alex.
You can call it Battle of the Brain Surgeons.
Right. Hey, Alex. You haven't.
Get on? I can't. My internet is slow, and then I tried to copy from my phone to my laptop, and I'm still not even in my email. Now I'm in my email.
Okay. Did you try from the text I sent you?
Yeah, because I tried it because I usually log in from my laptop, so I took the text link, copied it to my email draft, and tried to log in on my laptop to my email, open the draft, and now I copied the other link that you sent,
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let me call. I'll call. If you want to stay on the phone, I'll just call Grant. And you can be on the phone instead of coming on Zoom. All right. Hold on. Hold on. Hey, Grant, it's Mike.
Hi.
Hey, I got Alex on the other line. Let me bring her in. Hold on a second. Okay, you there, Alex? Grant, you there?
Yes.
All right, so Grant, I am on Zoom right now, and I'm in the middle of a recording. I've got Tave in Ohio on Zoom, Clinton in North Carolina on Zoom, and Nick out in Texas. They're all patriots. They're on Zoom with me now. Alex was having a hard time getting on, so I have her on the phone with us. So I do want to make this statement, and then hope that Grant's going to be fine with continuing to conversate while we're on Zoom live. And that is that we are not giving any legal advice. We're not acting as attorneys or attorneys at law or counsels of law. We are simply discussing our comprehension of law and treaties as we understand it and comprehend it. Supreme Court cases as we've read them and understand them. That goes for everybody speaking in this meeting right now. Anything else that can be said regarding that to negate, nullify any liabilities, folks?
Everyone's responsible for themselves, obviously.
Right.
Okay, so Alex does have some questions, I know, Grant, and so does Tave. So can you guys hear the phone fine?
I can.
Tave,
Yes,
can you
I
hear it?
can. Yep.
All right, and can you hear Tave?
Yes.
All right, Clinton, can you hear it?
Yeah, I can hear.
And you can hear him, Grant?
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear it.
And Nick?
I can hear everybody.
All right, and you can hear him, Nick? All right, great. All right, so I guess I know Alex has been burning the midnight oil, kind of like my son has been doing. So let's start with Alex's questions. I know she's got a handful for you, Grant.
Okay.
Okay. So we touched on, hi Grant again, and thank you so much. You are such a bowl of gold, at least to me.
Okay.
I appreciate your time. So I was wondering, I didn't quite understand, we touched on this before. You said one can argue that the state with only on 1128 the organization of the district courts. So if one can say that since this is being referred to, then obviously it's not the actual was joined the union. And I wonder, the language in 28 the district court, the federal judiciary, how would you argue this? I can't come up with a good argument to say, hey, it's the state you're referring to, because that's just here in the United States Code. For example, from California, it just says California shall be divided in these and these districts, but nowhere does it actually define. How do you argue that?
Well, the states themselves was created by an act of Congress in Title 28, 81 through 131. I think Tennessee is 122 or 123. I don't know which number California is, but those states were created by Congress and put into place in 1947. And that was done to put in place a new federal territorial government. So they simply set aside the republic, which is still there, but nobody is operating in it. So it's assumed to presume that today that everybody is operating in the federal territorial plane. Most people don't recognize that, but that's exactly what happens every day, and you do so primarily by estoppel, and that estoppel is created is when you give them an unrestricted signature.
Hey, I'm sorry, but I don't. How do you argue that this is the creation of states? Because what I could see coming back is, no, ma'am, this is just division of those states into judicial districts. Like I wouldn't.
But which states?
Example, Alabama is Section 81, and it says
right.
Alabama is divided into 3 judicial districts.
Yeah, those are federal, and those are federal judicial districts.
Right, but it's not the creation. How do you argue that this?
Well, that's not in the de jure state. That's in the federal territorial plane, and your remedy is at 28 USC 1746(1). If you want to go back into the republic and you want to be in the de jure government, but unfortunately there's nobody there. But if you want to go back over there and be under common law, then there's your remedy.
No, I understand. I just don't understand how I would substantiate my claim.
Yeah, and let me interject from kind of my perspective. I think what Alex is saying, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but from another perspective is, come on, Grant, the states are the states. Who's to say? Wait, hold on. Who's to say that in 28 USC that those states are not the states that we're all aware of and understanding as being the states? Those are the states.
Well, who created Title 28?
Yeah, but okay.
No, answer my question. Who created Title 28? Well, Congress did. Yeah. Okay. And see, the federal legislature has nothing to do with the several states of the Union, which the people created by their constitutions. And when they joined the Union, I think it's Article 4, Section 4.
Right. So let's give some clarity from that angle, coming back the other way. What are states? Let's talk about the republic and states, and a true state and a good state, a regular state, the states that we all want to be a part of. How did they come into being, and what are they? Let's clarify that.
Let me interject, because if this argument with that Title 28, as means anything else that's in Title 28 is also creation. Example, if it says in Title 28,
let me just say that
it doesn't mean that the judges were created in Title 28. They were already in the Constitution. So
which Constitution? No. Okay, Title 1 through Title 50, whatever title, how many titles they created, Congress has created. That is federal territorial law, and it only exists in the federal territorial plane and can only be applied in the federal territorial plane.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay, so it's all federal, and that's Ponzi versus Fessenden. You go read it. It's the planes of jurisdiction, where the court clearly laid out the judicial and the political aspects of the state, that separated the states from the federal government. The federal government has its place in the Constitution, and so does the several states of the Union.
I agree to all of that. What I cannot get, I cannot comprehend. Like, I wouldn't know how to substantiate if I was going to make the claim. You're referring to Alabama in Section 81, Title 28. That doesn't mean that that's the actual Alabama is the state that went to the Union. And I wouldn't know how to.
I would say it's not. It's not a state that joined the Union. And actually, that state, it boils down to this. Like I said before, the 4 aspects that govern legal relations, and the 4th one is title, who owns who and who owns what. Well, Congress created that, so they own that. Because we the people who created Congress, gave them the power in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. So, but we, the people, are the ones that created the several states of the Union.
Right.
We created the constitutions and joined the Union.
Let me interject this thought again, Alex. Let me interject this thought, because I think this comes down, because I didn't fully grasp it at first, but when I grasped it, it was like an explosion went off in my head. It was so obvious. When he says the federal territorial plane, and he talks about Ponzi versus Fesson and the planes of jurisdiction, I think that might be what you're not getting, in the sense that they exist. It exists, but it exists in another time, place, space, and plane. It's like it exists over there. That's why he's saying, if you want remedy to be over here, there's remedy to be over here. So therefore, if you're over there, you're still subject to their statutes, their codes, their rules, their regulations, their laws, because that's them over there. The whole time, place, space, and plane, I think, is what is throwing you. I think.
See, I think you can go to Rule 9, special pleadings.
Yes.
There's a section in there. It talks about time, and place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's exactly what they're talking about. Time, the place. Where are you? That's the jurisdiction. There's a clear distinction between the federal jurisdiction and the jurisdictions of the states.
Yeah.
But that was blurred when Congress created this new appearance of reality.
Okay.
When they created, they created a mirror image that looks it's designed to fool you. It looks just like the de jure republic, but it's not. See, and that's why there's a yellow fringe flag around the United States flag and the flags of those states when you walk into those courtrooms. Just to let you know you've entered into the federal territorial plane of jurisdiction.
Okay, maybe I can word it differently. For example, the 11th Amendment sovereign immunity, which says that the federal judicial power shall not extend to a citizen suing another state.
That's right. That means you can't take it into the Supreme Court.
Right, and it doesn't say suing the same state, but this is what the judiciary twisted out of it, even though it doesn't say that. So, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
So, this is my opinion. It may be true, may not be true, but my opinion, once they switched over into this new federal territorial plane and they created these new federal territorial states, which are composite states within the federal territorial plane, the 11th Amendment would not apply to them if you have the appropriate status when you go into court. Because when the 11th Amendment was created, those states that Congress created in 1947 didn't exist.
What I cannot get is why, just because it says Alabama in Title 28, why does that mean that this is created? Because in comparison, if it would say...
Okay, let me ask you this. Just think logically for a minute. Okay.
Yeah.
When did Alabama join the Union?
I don't know.
Well, it joined a long time ago.
Yeah.
Probably, I don't know, maybe early 1800s, 1700s, somewhere in that area.
Okay.
Tennessee joined in the late 1700s. But anyway, we joined the Union and everything was, why would they need to change it? Why would they need to create states in Title 28? There would be no need of it.
But they're not, based on what do you say that they created states? Because what I'm seeing is they're
statutorily created devices by an act of Congress.
Yeah, I think again, what Alex, I'm sorry, Alex is saying the way it reads, is not that they created the state, but that they created districts for the states.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. So where should I look to see that this creation?
Okay, so if Congress could create districts for the several states of the Union, How can that would violate the 10th Amendment?
They're not creating districts for the states of the Union. They're allegedly creating districts for their federal courts.
That's right. In the federal territorial plane, once they switched. And see, every day when you give them, every day when you do not use your remedy and you give them an unrestricted signature, you just transported yourself into that plane of jurisdiction and you agreed to it.
And see, the light went off in my head again right after you spoke, Alex. It hit me again, the clarity of it. They created those districts in that plane. So they created for themselves in that federal territorial plane those districts. So they're claiming that they have some authority in Alabama in those districts that they created. And they do in those districts that they created. But they don't if you're.
I would counter that they could say, no, we don't have jurisdiction in Alabama. We have jurisdiction in this courthouse.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and those courts, because those courts are federal territorial jurisdictions.
Mm-hmm.
That's why those flags have the yellow fringe around it. It's not because they're an admiralty. It's because they're the commercial flag of the United States, and you're under UCC, Universal Commercial Code. You're not under common law anymore.
Oh, and by the way,
if you were in a true state, if you were in a court of one of the jure states of the Republic that joined the Union pursuant to Article 4, Section 4, you'd be under common law.
Yeah, but I'm not saying that I'm in the state. I know when I'm in federal courthouse, this is federal territory, basically.
That's right.
So,
but when you walk down here to a court, it could be a traffic court.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a circuit court in whatever state you're in. You are still in a federal territorial plane.
Right. I'm just not seeing how they created this section. How did they create the actual states? Because what I'm reading again is they just
created it. They created them by statute.
Where's the
statute? Title 28, 81 through 131. They created those states right there. And they created the districts of those states.
So, okay, so let me say that again what I said before. Judges were already mentioned in the Constitution. The word is already there. So they were included in the Constitution. So just because the Congress may put the word judge into one of those sections doesn't mean that they created judges.
It means they created judges in their jurisdiction.
Yeah. See, the Constitution of the original Republic, that's not there. They created their federal Constitution over on that side of the fence.
And if you want...
Downs versus Bidwell said that the Constitution applies and it does not apply, depending upon essentially the legal relations of the parties. Okay, I can put that into perspective. Okay. One of the legal relations is your status. Now, if you have the status of a U.S. citizen, the Constitution at Article 4, Section 2, and the Privileges and Immunities Clause in the 14th Amendment does not apply to you. However, if you're a state citizen, privileges and immunities at Article 4, Section 2 do apply to you. U.S. citizens have no privileges or immunities.
I get all that. I just still can't. I wouldn't know. I mean,
what is it you're not getting, Alex?
It's which state? There's two different governments, and there's two different state governments. There's the governments that are operating today, which are operating under the territorial plane of jurisdiction. And how do you know that? Because over there, what do you use for money? You use Federal Reserve notes. And over there, and in that new plane of jurisdiction, you can you can discharge your debts with inspecific notes which have no assured value. This happens every day. But in the Republic, You have to extinguish your debts with lawful money. Gold and silver.
So if a state citizen would come into, they even come into federal court. I mean, they would come into federal court and sue another state, and then the state would come back and say, we can't be sued because we have 11th Amendment immunity.
No, because you can't. Because in those federal courts that exist today, those judges are not in proper office. Neither is the president. Neither the president and the Congress, the governors, the state legislators, everybody. The oaths of office that they take are in the forum of that federal territorial plane. They have no oath. They have no oath of office in the republic, so they're not in proper. Those people can't see you if you're a state citizen because they're not in proper office and legal relations to you.
What is you said they have no oath in the republic?
That's right.
What is that? Where's that? What is that based on? Where does it say that? Why is that?
Because of it's in the Constitution that they're supposed to have an oath.
Yes.
But their oath is over there in that government. It's a separate. The government that exists today you might as well say it's a government. It's as distinct and different from the government of the republic than if it was the government of China.
But you just said they don't have an oath in the republic, but the Constitution is of the republic and oath is mentioned.
Yes, that's right. But they don't. The form of the oath is not in the republic. It's in the federal territorial plane.
So are you saying if there was, so why then is the word oath?
So that's why if you're correct, then if you appear as not as a U.S. citizen but as a state citizen, they can't see you.
Well, by the way, here's an interesting thought. Maybe we can all go back and look at the inauguration of Trump and any other president. And did they say, do you swear to uphold the laws of the United States? Or did they say of the United States of America? And then I think people can start to get a little more understanding.
They all said United States. I listened to most of them take their oath. They all said United States. They did not say the oath of the Republic of the United States of America.
Right. And I'm just trying to prompt people to take note of that and go back and watch it, and you'll see that that's what he says is the United States.
I also took note of that the word United States is mentioned in the Constitution.
But that was before the federal territorial plane. They used both. They were entered.
So in the Constitution, where is that oath?
In the original, that oath they were referring to was the oath in the Republic.
Where's
that's all existed then.
But you said they don't have an oath? That's what I'm
They have an oath. They do have an oath, but the oath is in the Republic, or not in the Republic, but in this new federal territorial jurisdiction of government.
Oh, I understood that you said there is no oath in the Republic, but then I misunderstood.
Yeah, I'm just saying the Republic is still there. It's the foundational law upon which they exist. Without the laws, the Constitution in the Republic, they have no basis of legal existence.
Okay, so then I misunderstood. I understood that there is no oath in the Republic, but I'm like,
because there's nobody there. And what I'm saying is that these judges and congressmen and presidents and everybody like that don't have an oath in the Republic. The only people I think that could possibly have an oath is the Supreme Court members. And
for clarity, is there an oath for the Republic? There's nobody there now to take the oath, but is there an oath for the Republic?
Well, now I can't say this is true, but if you listen to that tape, what Richard said, he said that when Bill Clinton was being impeached for the Monica Lewinsky deal, he went to William Rehnquist, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court at the time, and because he had taken an oath to be the President of the United States, and see his impeachment proceedings was occurring in that plane of jurisdiction. He apparently went to, because, you know, that's all you heard about in the news, everybody talked about it, and then all of a sudden it just snapped, it just went away.
Right.
And the reason he said it went away was because Bill Clinton went to William Rehnquist and took the oath to be the President of the United States of America, the highest office in the land. And from that point, he pardoned William Jefferson Clinton in the federal territorial plane. So then the Chief Justice Rehnquist had to call in certain key members of the Senate and Congress and say, hey, if you want to continue the impeachment proceedings, you're all going to have to swear an oath and come back into the republic.
Now, did Clinton swear an oath to the United States of America after he got in trouble or before he got in trouble?
That's what I'm saying. No, he took his original oath, was just like Trump just did, in the federal territorial plane to that government.
So you're saying to get himself out of trouble, you're saying that the shrewd snake that we all know he is and was,
yeah,
he went over and took and swore an oath to the republic so that he could get into another jurisdiction. Wow.
He could pardon it, and from that jurisdiction, he can pardon himself. Now, that's just that's what Richard said on that tape.
Yeah, I remember hearing them talking about that. I watched the whole. I listened to the whole tape, Grant. And I understood it all completely.
And whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I do know that for one reason or another, all of a sudden, that's all you heard about on the news, and then boom, it just went away.
Right. Yeah, that is interesting. That's very interesting. I wonder if there'd be any way to prove that he.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be. Maybe it's in the archives somewhere.
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing to try to get to the bottom of, man. Because it would make perfect sense. They were after him in that jurisdiction. So he went over and called his little Supreme Court justice and had him swear an oath to the United States of America so that he could now claim that he's operating in that jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And he's a shrewd dirtbag. It sounds like something he would do, man.
Yeah. He's not stupid.
No.
And just like Barack Obama, he said more than any other president once you figure it out. You know, where he's talking to an audience of mostly African Americans, and he said, he's talking about his Obamacare, and he said, you don't know how to take care of yourself. Let the sovereign do it.
Right.
And then one of the last speeches he gave just before Trump went in his previous administration, he said that U.S. citizens must be allowed to fully operate their franchise.
So is there even sovereign, how can there be sovereign immunity for states and the people are the ones who are sovereign?
Because the sovereign people, you got to split in your mind. Mm-hmm. You got to think abstract. So in the Republic, when the 11th Amendment was passed, the sovereign people had used their authority to amend the Constitution and added the 11th Amendment to the Constitution, which stopped a state citizen of one state suing another state or a foreign individual or a foreign state.
Yeah.
So the judicial authority of the Supreme Court, they no longer had the authority to hear cases.
And that makes sense, yeah. Mm-hmm. But not towards their own citizens.
No, you could, like a citizen, like a state citizen of California could sue California under the controversies clauses in Article 3.
Under the controversy? Oh, well, if he was
there's controversy clauses.
But if he was going to go to federal court, the attorney general, whoever is speaking for California, they would say, no, we're sovereign. You can't sue us in federal court. We have 11th Amendment.
I would agree with that assessment if you were a U.S. citizen in residency in California.
Okay.
However, I would not agree with him if you were a state citizen of California as an inhabitant.
And the only place you could do that anyway would be in the Supreme Court if you were a U.S. inhabitant.
Yeah, you could have but you automatically, and this is my opinion, if Congress created these new states, Congress is the creator of those states, and so you're in that federal jurisdiction. It says clearly under the controversies clauses in Article 3 that the people in their sovereign capacity as state citizens could sue the United States to anything where they are applicable. They can directly sue the United States. See, that was not removed by the 11th Amendment.
Yeah, because it only applies. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, and that's why okay. So then your opinion, you said last time that the Supreme Court justices do have the power to say what the Constitution means.
Yeah, they're the ultimate. They're the ultimate arbiter of the interpretation and meaning of the Constitution.
See, and this is, I would like to understand how you support this, because based on, well, for me, I'm reading Article 3.
It supports it because that's in the Constitution.
Where exactly?
We, the people, created Article 3.
Yeah.
And we put the authority we created a judiciary for the federal government.
Yeah, so they are invested with the judicial power.
Yeah, they're invested with the judicial power because we, the people, have the power, and we gave them the power. So
why would that include that they can say whatever they want to say about? Because
somebody in this system has to have the ultimate power to settle controversies.
Wouldn't that be a jury?
You could settle. Well, that would be in the Republic. You would have the right to have a jury. They'll still give you a jury today, but it's not a jury under common law. It's purely, in today's world, everything is purely statutory.
I agree. I just don't see how the word judicial power include that. Well, we can interpret however we see fit what it means, because
it's going to decide it.
Like I said, you would say the ultimate arbiter would be what? So
that was the purpose. They put juries in there. That's why we had juries. The ultimate power was in the hands of the people by the jury. The jury could find, but they could say anything they want to, but the jury could find you not guilty.
Right. My question was just to you, like how you form that opinion. That's what it means, because I just don't.
The ultimate judicial power to settle basically questions regarding Constitution of the United States of America in relation to the people of the several states, and the constitutions of those states were placed solely in that judicial power of the Supreme Court. Now, Congress, we said, could create lesser courts.
Yeah.
And that's in that federal territorial courts. They were granted the authority to create those courts.
Right. Yeah. I see that.
But in the Republic, they had to, for it to go into a federal court, there had to be a controversy, which was pursuant to Article 3.
Yeah.
See, that was all switched when Roosevelt put in this new deal, his new appearance of reality, and they flipped the government over. And that was switched in the first switch in time case.
I just want to add a thought to that too. After listening to that CD, that they, you know, what we usually hear about is the bankers, the Banking Act, and all that. You know, with all the patriot movements that are going on, they're usually associating all of this. We're talking about the federal territorial plane, but when Grant mentions the switch, it needs to be really clear and understood that that is completely relative to what we all already understand about the bankers, right, and the banking system and the Fed taking over and privatizing the government, the Fed, and really the government. The government became a corporation. I mean, it's a corporate entity. It's a corporation, which essentially is, you know, owned by who? It's not. It's not.
It has to be owned. It's owned by Congress.
Right.
Congress has exclusive ownership because we, the people, gave it to them at Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. So anything in the 10 mile square, the territories, or the insular possessions of the United States is exclusively Congress's.
Right, but they're applying their laws and rules to anybody and everybody throughout the breadth of the United States of America.
Yeah, they did that, but they did that by two mechanisms. By establishing a second-class citizenship pursuant to the 14th Amendment, which the Supreme Court has ruled as the property and our franchises of the United States.
Well, by the way,
So,
Josh asked me earlier where that was at, and I didn't know. Can you tell me where that's at again? Where it says the U.S. the 14th Amendment citizens
it's
are property and franchises.
it's in that paperwork that I gave you. I can't remember the specific court case, but it's there, and that's why Barack Obama said that you know, you don't have to take care of yourself. Let the sovereign do it, because the sovereign is the owner. See, we the people were the owners in the republic, but exclusive of the 10 mile square and the territories and the insular possessions of the United States. Everything else within the geographical boundary of the United States, which is the several states of the Union, belong to the people. Now, in the Republic, if I was a state citizen of Tennessee, if I decided to move to California, I would have privileges and immunities pursuant to Article 4, Section 2. Which would mean that whatever rights a state citizen of California would have under the common law, according to their constitution in California, I would have them also. And the reciprocal would be true if somebody from California moved to Tennessee. They would have privileges and immunities. But U.S. citizens don't have privileges or immunities.
And did you?
That's why when they leave, there's a court case that says that when they leave the District of Columbia, they lose the common law right of travel.
Right, but most people, when they hear that, they would think that means if they drive out of the 10 mile square, but they're applying it.
That's essentially what the court was saying. When they leave that jurisdiction, the federal jurisdiction, and come into one of the several states of the Union, they don't have any privileges or immunities.
Right, but now they've got this artificial overlay over all of the states of the Union.
Yeah, which complicated things even more to understand judicially.
Right.
They're not the owner. They're not the owners. See, we the people in the several states of the Union, we're the owners of the states. And if I'm and see, a license is permission to do that, which is illegal. So if these roads out here at my house, here in the state of Tennessee, they belong to the people. And so did we need a license to travel on our own roads? Did we need a license to open a business? A license to get married? A license to do this? A license to do that? No, because we're the owners. However, if you are a U.S. citizen, and you come here in the several states of the Union, you're not one of the owners. You have the right of residency.
Right. So technically, and here's a point Grant's made before, and I agree with him. We, the people, are the ones that should be, all these fees that are being paid, all these taxes and fees and licensures that foreigners are paying should be going to we, the people. But the government has stolen it from us.
Yep. They stole your birthright. They stole your status. They stole your capacity at law. They stole your ownership of land.
Yeah, and so people need to understand how they stole it so that they can understand how they can get it back.
Well, that's a long story, but that's essentially what happened. It's essentially done through the birth certificate and the Seskeke Trust.
Right. Right. Which most people are familiar with that. The fact that they, within, again, going back to their scheme with the bankers and the corporatization of the government, they came up with their little scheme to create the birth certificate so that they could pontificate that as a bond and say, okay, everybody is property. Everybody's a 14th Amendment citizen that's born and registered as a property of the state so that they become property. So of course there's a process.
And they can be put up as collateral for the debt.
Right. And of course there's a process to undo that. I don't fully understand that. I know that there's some significance to getting your original long form certificate of live birth. And I think the significance of that is that when they give you a birth certificate, it just says birth certificate. It doesn't say certificate of live birth, because they're presuming you to be dead in their system. They're presuming you to be, a dead entity that they own. So the fact that you get from your, what's the name of the darn office again? You have to go to the,
Down on Brab Street.
no, that's where they put our birth certificate. But what's the name of the organization with the state again? The agency that does the where you get your original long form birth certificate again. Damn it, I can't remember the name. Or I had to order it. Anyway, you got to contact the authority. I'm gonna go ask my son.
Talking about Social Security Administration?
No, I'm gonna go ask
Same
my
building.
son.
Vital Statistics.
Office of Vital Statistics.
That's it. Yeah, same building.
Yeah. And then when you get your original long form certificate of live birth, I think that it's telling that when you get that, you can actually send it to your state where you were born to get it authenticated. And then you take that and you send it to the federal government to get it authenticated. And they send it back with some US codes stamped on the front of it. I mean, why would that process even exist if it was just a birth certificate? The state would be like, why are you sending me your certificate? That's here it is. You got it. No, why is there a secondary process to send it to the Secretary of State to get it authenticated and then have it sent back with a little gold tassel, when it comes back from the federal government with US codes on it? And when you start reading the US codes, it starts talking about, you go down a whole rabbit hole, reading code after code after code, and it follows you down this rabbit hole of understanding the whole system essentially. So when you get your original long form birth certificate, it's essentially saying, I own it now. Now you don't own it anymore. I've gained possession of it. It's mine. I got it authenticated. It's in my possession. I am the living man that holds this certificate of live birth. It's proof that I'm alive. I'm not a dead man. So they have their games that they play, but it's just,
I don't know if I agree with that. That process? If you want to understand the birth certificate, you can go to the Federal Judiciary Network television and revised Article 9. And there's several federal judges there, law professors, and they're discussing the new revised Article 9 bankruptcy. And one of the judges she says in there that for this process to be legally correct, you must have the proper name of the registered organization on the legal paperwork. And one of the other judges said, "Oh, I've heard that referred to as the birth certificate." So they go, that tells you a little, they talk about it right there. So what that birth certificate represents is a registered organization. And that organization was created via the birth certificate, and they own it.
Right, which they're pinning to your person.
Well, no, what they're doing is that now I don't know if that's true, but a very learned person who went through this process, and I'm not going to get the details of what he did about his birth certificate, but he got a lot of money out of it. But anyway, they're saying essentially when your parents sign that birth certificate that you're a person of unknown lineage. You're a foundling. In other words, you have no birthright. So the state takes custody of you and gives your parents custodial rights to you as the parent. And but that entity belongs to them. It will always belong to them. And personally, I don't want anything necessarily to do with that birth certificate.
Well, I think it would make sense for a person to say that they're going to take it back, that they're going to own it, because as you know, there's two dates on the birth certificate. There's two dates. There's a date of your live birth, and then there's a date of registration. So it would seem to me by taking,
that's where they registered the entity, the foundling, where they registered it to the state.
Right, but when you take it back, you know the old saying, possession is 9/10 of the law, right? So by taking it back,
you may be true, but I doubt if you're going to take possession of that legal entity, because that entity belongs to the United States, because U.S. citizens are the property and are franchises of the United States.
Well, yeah, U.S. citizen.
And then you go to Article 4, Section 3. It says that nothing in this Constitution shall be so used to prejudice any of the claims of the United States. But then it goes on and says, nor of any state.
Right.
So,
which would
I don't know what you're going to do. See, that's why I don't claim the birth certificate.
Well, if anything, I would say, yeah. Well, it's an interesting dilemma, because here one of the.
I know what needs to be done, but I'm not going to say it here.
Right, I know, you know, and I've heard you say it, so I won't say it either. But I think that it's what we do know is that there's three ways of looking at a U.S. citizen. One way, which is the most accurate way, is what you've brought to light with many of us, Grant, and that is that there's posterity, people that have a birthright, vested right to their birthright.
To claim the title that was granted in Article 1 of the Treaty of Paris as a state citizen.
Exactly.
Which is the citizen that's referred to in the Constitution when you see the citizen with a capital C.
Right.
And it's referred to that until you get to the 14th Amendment, and it's a lowercase c.
Right. So the first and foremost, which I concur with, and it makes perfect sense, would be posterity, plain and simple, which is bloodline, plain and simple. The blood that created this nation. Now let's put that aside, and now let me jump all the way over to the other extreme, and that would be any Tom, Dick, or Harry that comes over here, or any Julio or Anna, you know, that comes over here from some other part of the world, primarily South America, Central America. They're flooding them in here, Mexico, across the border, and then they're going to give them citizenship, and they're going to say that they're a U.S. citizen. So first of all, the most important point that would need to be made about this right off the bat is that if anybody's going to make a claim, as Grant is, and I concur with him, and my son and many others concur, that there is bloodline posterity that have vested rights because our blood made this nation, we have all rights, privileges, and immunities just by that alone, by our blood, period. That's a fact.
It's in the law dictionary, it's called privity of blood.
Right, privity of blood.
Which makes us co-parsonaries to the state of our forefathers.
Right. So to think that anybody Julio Frances is going to come across the border and be given citizenship, and he's going to have the same rights, privileges, and immunities as my blood who found this nation? No, no.
Well, they're not going to give them a state citizenship.
Right. So
they'll give them a U.S. citizenship and turn them into property.
Right. Which goes to your point earlier, and we'll find the case that the Supreme Court has ruled that all 14th Amendment citizens are properties and franchises of the United States. So we know that that's the other extreme. And again, I just want to point it out that that alone should make the case. Anybody in their right mind should be able to say, scratch their head and say, gee, I guess he's making a good point there. Some schmo that never lived here gets to come across the border and be a U.S. citizen. He should not have the same rights, privileges, and immunities as a blood posterity. So there's clearly those two extremes. But now in the middle, we have the person that comes over here, the anchor baby syndrome, right? The person that comes over here and they were born on this land, right? So because they were born here, now we have another kind of category. I see your hand, Tave, so hold on just a minute. So we've got the born on the U.S. soil. So now this is an issue that needs to be addressed by the Supreme Court, and it needs to be addressed properly. It should be
been addressed by the Supreme Court in Kim Won Ark.
Which states?
Kim Won Ark.
Right.
That's where they settled that, the just solus, the place of birth. See, the place of birth is paramount in the 14th Amendment U.S. citizenship.
Right.
All persons born or naturalized in the United States. But see, the previous citizenship was not predicated upon just mere place of birth. It was your blood.
Right. And that, so in other words, there is no, and that would have to be the distinction. It has to be, because that goes to the point. You're right. That case, what's the case again? With
I think it's Kim Won Ark.
Right. And they ruled that because the Chinese parents came over here and had a baby here, because he was born on the soil, he was going to become a 14th Amendment citizen. So even then,
his parents were citizens of China. They came here to work, but he was born in San Francisco, California.
Right. So now we can even take that example and apply it to what I was saying. Even there is a good example of how somebody cannot come over here, have a baby, and now that baby, just because they were born on the soil, they get the same rights, privileges, and immunities as bloodline posterity who have privity of blood? No, it would make no sense.
They don't get them, even if they are granted U.S. citizenship status. They do not have the same rights, privileges, or immunities as the state citizens.
Right. So the question would...
U.S. citizens have no privileges or immunities.
Right.
And they certainly don't have all the rights that was secured by the people at the 9th Amendment.
Right. All right. Let me let Tave, he's got his hand raised. Go ahead, Tave.
Does anywhere that when we...
Speak up a little louder. Tave, speak up louder if you can.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there anywhere now that currently under with this birth certificate that by that being brought into play that we as posterities have lost the right because it's signed away to the state now?
When you sign the birth certificate, you voluntarily waived it. And every day you give them a unrestricted signature, it's assumed that you have waived it. Brady versus United States. Constitutional rights must be waived voluntarily. Has to be voluntary.
Gotcha.
See, we have voluntary servitude in the United States.
Let me ask you this, Grant. Why do you think it is that somebody can go into a traffic court or just any other court, and the judge will say in the court, okay, so you're going to take a plea here. Do you realize you're waiving all your constitutional rights when they don't really even have any?
Well, they do have constitutional rights under the 14th Amendment. They have due process and equal protection.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, the rights that they do have.
Privileges and immunities.
Right. Gotcha.
So, see, that for you guys to recognize that when the 14th Amendment was created, see, the due process clause under the 5th Amendment was done so in respect to legal relations between the citizens of the several states and the United States. The Due Process and Equal Protection Clause in the 14th Amendment was to establish legal relations between the several states of the Union and these newly created U.S. citizens. So the states must guarantee that they have due process and equal protection. The Privileges and Immunities Clause in the 14th Amendment was struck down by the Supreme Court in the slaughterhouse cases, which said they had no privileges or immunities at Article 4, Section 2, nor in the 14th Amendment, because to do so, without going into much detail, would have turned the established state of federalism that existed between the federal government and the several states of the Union up on its head.
Right.
So then
So
by
now
us voluntarily signing that birth certificate and any other thing that you're talking about, we have to eliminate that and get out of that situation. Therefore, if we're going to obtain our posterity again. Is that right? Does that sound right?
Let's say, like, my daughter, she just had a son. You know, I told her this, but nobody wants to listen to me. But, you know, I've got like 5 Revolutionary War veterans in my bloodline. My wife's got 1. So that makes her one of the posterity by blood, birth, and descent. So, and that makes her son one too. So when they brought that birth certificate in there, see, it's an old common law thing. When you sign, you have to give public notice. So you can give public notice. So she could have stated, and the Supreme Court says that you have the right of political self-determination. So, and this is political self-determination, but I'm just saying only the people who have the birthright can make that political self-determination to come back and be a state citizen. Otherwise, what right do you have to be there? Because if you had the right to begin with, there would have been no need for the 14th Amendment to be put in the Constitution in the first place. But back to the birth certificate, you know, she could have signed her name. Because, see, legal relations are, I don't know how many heard me last time, in my opinion, I'm not telling nobody, you know, legal relations are essentially established by 4 legal elements. Who are you? Where are you? What are you doing? And who owns who and who owns what? So who are you is status. The law of status. Go look it up in the law dictionary. Where are you is jurisdiction. What are you doing is your capacity. Because I can assure you, the political and legal capacity of a state citizen is entirely different from that of a U.S. citizen. And the 4th is title. Who owns who and who owns what? Well, the United States owns U.S. citizens, but we, the people, own the United States because we created it.
Right on. Exactly.
So when
that cleared it up a little bit. Yeah.
When they brought that birth certificate in there, she could have signed her name, and she could have put state citizen of Tennessee, her status, and she could have put 28 U.S.C. 1746-1, the jurisdiction, and then she could have put without prejudice, her capacity. So without prejudice is your UCC remedy.
Man, I can't believe you advised your daughter to do that and she didn't do it.
No.
And that goes back to your case you had with the land stuff as well. By doing that, where you put yourself at as far as your status. Then
but I didn't state my status. I didn't say anything about my status. I just said the jurisdiction that was going to govern the contract. I just signed my name and I put 28 U.S.C. 1746-1. That's your judicial remedy. The attorneys and the other people signed it. They didn't know what they were signing because I outsmarted the attorneys, the smarters. And then when they took the contract over to the judge, he told them what they did, and you can guess what happened then.
Right. Now, did that same stuff there apply to when we talk about in 1933 the Federal Reserve Act, where they talked about us discharging debt, where you're saying how to fill that out, just like you said that birth certificate? Does that imply that what we're talking about there, basically, to put you in that same where you would be at jurisdiction wise?
What they did,
kind of.
You know, I'm not saying You know, there are some bad things about what they did.
Yeah.
You know, they created, okay, I'll put it this way. When Biden was president and inflation was coming up and everybody's complaining about inflation, there was some female reporters there at the White House, and he was getting ready to jump on the helicopter. And he came out there, and they was hammering him with questions and stuff, and they was talking to him about the inflation, about the problem of inflation. He didn't answer it. He didn't say anything. He just turned and gave them this deviled look, and he said, "You all just need to be thankful I'm allowing you to make money." And he told them the absolute truth.
That is
now, they've created a system over here where you can engage in commerce. Do you like being able to go down here and using your registered organization to go where they can print money up out of thin air so you can go buy a house, a car, all the transactions and credit that has to be done to get a loaf of bread in the grocery store? Do you like going to the grocery store and buying a loaf of bread, which has using money that has no specific value?
All right.
It's an incredible system for commerce, and it's essentially what's keeping you alive.
And every single one of these.
I keep telling everybody, when Roosevelt talked about it in 1935 in that speech, he said, our path to recovery is a narrowly conceived effort to exchange the appearance of reality for reality itself. Now you're in the appearance of reality. And there's a lot of good things about it. Just like a lot of people can exercise, a lot of people are really good franchise operators. They can operate that franchise and they can make a lot of money.
I want to go.
Which may or may not be possible in reality.
Right.
And all the ones coming across the border now.
I don't want to do anything to disrupt their system.
Right.
And all the ones coming across the border now are going to be able to be borrowed on.
I would just put it like this: anybody who is a birthright privity of blood posterity is absolutely entitled to all rights, privileges, and immunities, because they're the ones that founded this nation and the government. And they should be just that should actually be a simple public conversation that should take place, and everybody needs to accept it. And if the court's got a rule on it and put it on the national news, they got to make that happen, because that's common sense.
Right. And if you're not part of that group, you don't have any say.
That's right.
That's it. That's it.
So this is the point. We, the people who are the owners, we created a new class of citizenship to give you legal existence in our country, and we granted you the right of residency to live on our land. And you can come here and exercise your franchise, and you have certain rights, and you can own property, but you're not the lawful owner of it. You have the right of use, and you can use this money, and you can make a lot of money. You can make a lot of money. Oprah Winfrey lives in a mansion. She's a very successful franchise operator. But you're not one of the owners.
Right.
And you have no privileges and immunities.
Yep. And then on that note, which again, anybody who's privity of blood, they, all rights, privileges, and immunities should mean, and in my opinion, it does mean, we can operate in either jurisdiction and still have all privileges, rights, and immunities.
Well, you can, just like me, you can operate in the Republic as a U.S. citizen. If you choose to, you can operate in the Republic. But then the laws of the form of the contract is what governs the contract. And essentially, if you control the condition precedent on the contracts, the judges down here in these courts with the yellow fringe flag on them, which are operating territorially, have no jurisdiction over the contract. And the problem is, where are you going to go to get a judge to adjudicate a contract if you have a controversy?
Right. Which brings up
the only place I know that might be would be the Supreme Court.
Right. Which bring up that case, because I wanted to kind of review that with you. The one about, what was it about taking, how can you claim you have sovereign, privileges and immunities, but still get Social Security benefits? There was a case on that where the judge said you can't do one for the other?
Well, that was the Ashwander decision in TVA versus Ashwander. That was put in place by Justice Brandeis, and he put it in place previous to the enactment of the Social Security plan. And see, what he said in that court case was that if you take the benefit of a statute, whether it be Social Security or Title V or whatever, if you take the benefit of a statute, you then cannot turn around and question its constitutionality. That was his way of protecting the Social Security Act with
okay, well,
ruling.
All right. Well, no, I appreciate it. I'm glad we brought that up again, because to me, that does nothing to nullify or mitigate my position that, and this should be ruled on. If it has to get there, we'll get it there. But it should be ruled that privity of blood posterities, any laws that are created for 14th Amendment citizens don't apply anyway, even if a privity of blood is operating in commerce or operating in.
Okay. Those people that you're talking about are the sovereigns. They are the owners.
Right.
That's their status as state citizens of the Republic. That was the status that was recognized by Article 1 in the Treaty of Paris.
Right.
And Article 1 of the Treaty of Paris was the condition precedent to the creation of this nation.
Right.
Because they got recognized in international law as sovereigns, which would put them on equal footing with King George III. So, in that newfound sovereignty, they created the United States of America, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union. So they created their own country.
Right. Hey, Josh.
And there was,
I'm sorry, hold on, Grant. Josh,
Yeah.
Grant said he can't recall what case that was, but he said it's in the paperwork he gave you, as far as all 14th Amendment citizens are property and franchises. Right. He said it's in the paperwork he gave you there. So just keep researching.
Hey, Mike. I
Yeah.
just wanted to ask Grant. I wanted to ask Grant one more question. If he could,
Go ahead.
off the top of his head, just give me his top 5, either treaties, documents, or charters to reference anything that would be helpful for me, going back to like the Treaty of Paris and anything, just like 5 of them or 3 of them, whatever you would off the top of your head.
the Treaty of Paris is the essential one. If you can prove your bloodline posterity, that means you can make a claim on the Treaty of Paris.
Okay.
And then the Treaty of Paris, pursuant to Article 6, Article 6 says this Constitution, and then they said in there all treaties made, and when they said all treaties made, it referred to the Treaty of Paris. And all treaties that shall be made are the supreme law of the land, and every judge in every state is bound thereby.
Well, that answers it for you right there.
That answers it right there. You don't need to tell me anymore.
And the other thing is, Penwalls versus Stones, say they were in the Republic. When you read these court cases, you have to think abstractly. Were they talking about the state citizens in the Republic, or were they talking about U.S. citizens in the Federal Territorial Plain? Are they talking about U.S. citizens in the Republic? You have to view through that lens when you read the court cases.
Right.
Got it.
So,
And you can also take special note of capital C, lower c, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
I wrote
that's
that
in the
down. Yep.
Constitution, and they are the inhabitants. So I'll go to the 14th Amendment. Now, the 14th Amendment in the first paragraph created U.S. citizens as legal entities. Let's see, state citizens was created by legal entities and recognized by the Crown. So if you go to the second paragraph, which nobody ever reads, it talks about what would happen if a state denies people their right to vote. So, and it goes in there in that section and talks about it clearly makes the distinction if you have eyes to see. And it talks about the white, it didn't say white, it says the male inhabitants 21 years of age or older and U.S. citizens. See, they made the distinction right there in that amendment.
By the way,
see, women could not vote at that time.
Yeah, Alex, you and I were discussing that the other day. Is there any, do you need to discuss? Go ahead. Any questions on that for Grant?
Yes, absolutely. Because I want to know how you read it that way. I actually wrote it down, and I simplified it for the sake of discussion. And I'll read it simplified. And Grant, tell me if you disagree with my simplification. But because I'm not seeing that distinction. So in the simplified version, I would put it like this: that when the right to vote died to any of the male inhabitants of such state, being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States, cases of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion which the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens 21 years of age in such state. Would this simplified version be okay for you?
Well, the only thing I'm going to say, it said the male inhabitants 21 years of age
Yes.
and U.S. citizens.
I'm going to read it as it's written.
I know, and it says and.
Yeah. So what
When you put and in there, it's separating the two distinctions.
I don't know. So
It's just this. Let me explain it this way: if the freed male slaves who'd just been granted U.S. citizenship were the same as the male inhabitants, they wouldn't have had to say and U.S. citizens.
But couldn't they have meant? So I'm just going to read it again for everyone who's listening. Applied to any of the male inhabitants of such state, being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States. So what to me is ambiguous is
no. This is the way I interpret. You can interpret it any way you want to. Those male inhabitants were the state citizens of the republic.
Right.
And the U.S. citizens were the citizens of the United States that had been newly created by the first paragraph in the 14th Amendment.
Yeah, to me that's crystal clear to me. In fact, I can't. The only reason I can't understand why you don't grasp that, Alex, is just like when we talked about it the other day. It's you have to understand that that first of all, that was written right in the 14th Amendment, right, which was creating a new citizen, and the only thing that existed prior to then was the state citizen, which was voting at 21 years of age. Right. That's all that existed. So since they're creating a new citizen, they're telling you either these old guys in their way and their reality, or these new guys. If you discriminate against either one, you can't do it.
Okay, I want to go somewhere. I want to explain something, right? Because I don't want to. You can look at it, but I want to get something to the other people. Okay. In today's world, when they flip the territorial planes, only U.S. citizens are allowed to vote in these new elections. Because when you go down here to register, you have to register to vote, and you have to check a little box that says that you're a U.S. citizen, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do they allow, once they did the flip, do they allow any of the people to vote? Did they deny them their right when they no longer operated the republic that the people created them to do and created this new little separate state over here? Did they not deny them their right by doing that? Did they not have a duty? Does Congress not have a duty and obligation to its creator to operate the government?
That's huge, man.
Okay.
Wow, that's a huge point you're bringing up.
Number two. Okay.
That's magic, so, David Copperfield stuff.
No, that is massive. That never dawned on me, Grant, until you just said it. That's like that needs to go to the Supreme Court tomorrow. You know what I mean? Hey, Supreme Court.
You can't do it unless you're a state citizen. You don't have standing to bring that issue unless you're a state citizen.
Right. Which let me just interject one thought on that, since this is being recorded. That's what we're doing at TAPS, TAPS -PMA. TAPS which stands for True American Posterity Sovereigns hyphen PMA for Private Ministerial Association or Private Member Association, is we're gathering, we're calling out to Americans who are bloodline, privity of blood posterity, that your family bloodline goes back to the men who built this nation, so that we can start doing all the things we need to do lawfully to reestablish our birthright rights and privileges and immunities, so that we can go into that Supreme Court and get some things changed and undone that need to be changed or done or undone.
Right. See, our forefathers have won the war. When they were writing the Constitution up there in Independence Hall, that story about where Benjamin Franklin came out, this lady came up to him and she said, "Sir, what have you gentlemen been doing in there?" And he said, "Madam, we're giving you a republic if you can keep it."
Right.
Okay, we didn't keep it. But anyway, if you, in the Republic, there was a court case, Penwell versus Stones. It says that there is no distinction between the people and their states. Because, see, the people are the owners. Just like King Charles is the owner of England and Wales and Canada and New Zealand and Australia and all those other Commonwealth nations. He's the owner.
And again, the people are the posterity.
Yeah, because all of we the people are dead, and all that remains is their posterity.
What is that court case?
Okay, I'm going to go back to this. So in Penwell versus Stones, it said there is no distinction between the people and their state. And that's true because, see, they're the owners.
Penwell versus Stones?
Michael, I'll have to give it to you. It's written on there. I don't know the correct spelling, but I got a point to make.
Josh said he's got it. What is it?
It's Fenhollow versus Dones. Doanes.
Fenhollow
Versus Dones.
versus Dones. Doanes.
Okay, so there is no distinction between the people and their state. Okay, I'll go back to Article 4, Section 3. Nothing in this Constitution shall be so used to prejudice any of the claims of the United States. That government up there in the 10-mile square. And then he goes on and says, nor of any state. Now, what state was it talking about when they created that? It was talking about the original states that joined the Union. So there's nothing in that Constitution that shall so prejudice any of your claims if you are a state citizen, because there's no distinction between you and your state.
That's right.
Which would include Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17.
Right.
Which would include the General Welfare Clause, which is what they used to create the Social Security Act.
Right.
Can I ask you, would you say that the invented immunity or judicial immunity could be a title of nobility?
No.
No. Okay.
Well, the judges, they have a certain immunity in their. See, under the law of agency, the agent always has certain immunities, which are dependent upon his principle. So that's just like a police officer. If he gets out here and he engages in his duties as a police officer, as long as he acts within the scope of authority of his principle, he should be indemnified.
Right.
However, if he acts outside the scope of authority of his principle, he no longer has indemnity.
Right. But in the federal plane, they do have immunity, and I wonder if a counter argument could be
to a certain extent. But there's court cases that says, if they do certain things, no, they don't. If you are a U.S. citizen, I'll just keep it this simple. If you're a U.S. citizen in the federal territorial plane and they do anything to violate your due process and equal protection, they lose jurisdiction. That's Title V, I believe.
Do they Title V?
Title V is the Administrative Procedures Act. That was put in place because, the United States had to administer its new properties, which included U.S. citizens.
Oh, so then
So to enter into the federal territorial plane, that Title V is the legal portal to which you go through. So if you're going to operate over there, then I would suggest you learn how to use Title V, particularly using the Administrative Procedures Act, where you can, if you learn how to use your administrative due process in the federal territorial plane, that's a big key right there.
why would the Administrative Procedure Act by an allegedly Article 3 court?
Oh, let's see. If you go to the Supreme Court page, it talks about if you want to bring a controversy under Article 3, and then in that same space, it talks about a certain section in Title 28 under Article 3. See, there's two. There's always two. The one they're talking about in Article 3 tells you what to do under that is the Republic. The other one is in the federal territorial plane.
You're saying, I lost the initial source of this. What did you say that was? If you go to the Supreme Court, you said? Or what did you mean?
If you go to the Supreme Court under Article 3,
yeah.
If you go to their webpage, it tells you how to go into the court under Article 3.
Okay.
And then right there in that same section, it tells you how to go into the court under Article 3 at 28 USC such and such, such and such. That's the federal territorial plane.
Okay, what would I put into the
You'd have to have a controversy under the Article 3 controversies clauses.
No. I mean to get to that page. Like Supreme Court.
I don't know specifically. You'll just have to go to Title 28 and read through it. That's the judiciary on their side of the fence. Right.
And so then I would find the answer that actually that the administrative procedures apply, and because of that they don't have immunity. I lost.
No, and in the federal territorial plane, Title V applies there. It does not apply in the Republic. So to enter into the federal territorial plane, you have to go via, it's like a portal, from which that's a portal you go into the federal territorial plane. And it basically establishes legal relations between you and this new fourth state government called the administrative state.
Okay.
And it gives you the right to go in there if you have a controversy. Before you even go into court, you can go contact the heads of those agencies and demand the right to an administrative procedures meeting. And you can bring a court recorder in there. So whatever happens in there, you can take it on to court if you want to. Or they may agree and say, okay, you're right. You don't have to do that.
So is there a difference between me filing?
The difference between you, the only way you have legal existence, and I would say in the Republic, there's no such thing as green cards. Now, in the federal territorial plane, there are green cards.
No, I mean like the procedure. I'm not getting the difference between an administrative procedure and an actual procedure according to the civil rules of procedure, or is it the same?
That's civil. No. Oh. The administrative Title V is where you can go sit down and talk with these agents of these agencies and say, I've got a problem here, and can we handle this administratively instead of going into court? And if you can't go into court, then the rules of civil procedure are going to apply when you go into court.
Oh, so you're not saying
no.
Any of these? So the judicial officers, are they any of these agents of the Administrative Procedures Act?
No.
I'm not getting it.
No, go read it. You need to go read it.
Okay.
What he's saying is,
while I'm reading it,
it lays it out right there. You know, I don't know the specifics of it, but if anybody wants to do any kind of special investigative stuff is find out the correct procedure to contact the administrators or the agents of these agencies, and how you can correctly go to them and send them notice that you want to have your administrative procedures with them, where you can sit down and talk to them and try to handle the controversy that you have with that particular organization administratively, instead of going
to immunity of judicial officer.
That doesn't. That's the judges don't. They don't come under Title V.
So how did we get
Sounds-
Title
It
V?
sounds like a mediation, more or less, before actually having to go to
Yep.
court and do your battle.
You can use your administrative You can use your administrative procedures to try to handle the situation before you go into court. And if you know what you're saying and know how to say it to them, they're probably going to agree with you.
Do you think
To Title V, because I asked something about immunity. So how did
The judges have judicial immunity in some instances in the federal territorial plane. In other instances, they don't. Any judge who acts outside of his jurisdiction is guilty of treason.
another interesting question? But well, for U.S. citizens, I guess that doesn't apply, right? Because there are several court.
No, U.S. citizens have a lot of rights and have a lot of power, just like they gave you in Title 42.
Well,
They gave you a lot of power.
I mean, if you read the SCOTUS cases that created all this judicial immunity, they acted outside of their scope, outside of their canons, outside of the powers that they were invested in via Constitution, and they still got.
Well, see, I don't know how many times I have to say it. See, it all depends upon the status and the jurisdiction of what that court case was ruled under.
Right. That's what I was saying.
And and most of the time, once you figure it out, I agree with them.
Okay, so because all those cases, I believe there were not in the Republic. There were always SU citizens.
Probably.
Yeah. So
and post 47, after the new political state affairs was put in complete operation.
no, somewhere before, I think they established judicial immunity at the end of the 19th century, so 18 something. That's when they created.
Yeah, they would have some judicial immunity, but not always, because I've got court cases in here. I could go, if I had them, I could read them off to you.
Yeah, I mean, if there are even today, but most of the time they're like with a blanket.
No judge has judicial immunity to deny you your constitutional rights under the federal constitution or the state constitution.
Yeah, but
that's why I said, if you're a U.S. citizen, they can't deny you your due process and equal protection.
Okay, so if they say judges cannot be sued for damages in a civil lawsuit,
you may not be able to sue that judge that denies you your due process and equal protection, but he would probably be removed from the bench.
right? Yeah, you can't sue them, but you can get them removed.
I don't think I can get them removed, and that wouldn't be a proper cure. But
well, you've not showed that they've done anything to violate your rights. You only have rights in this. The only reason you have rights in this country is because they've given you this legal existence established by a green card,
right,
which is going to pull you in under the 14th Amendment, where you have due process and equal protection.
Yeah. And what did you say about treason?
If a judge acts out, if a judge acts outside of his jurisdiction, it would be considered treason.
And so the Constitution defines two things for treason. I think we remember treason.
Yeah, anybody that does anything to destroy the republic, essentially.
I think it's war. It's really different in the Constitution.
Yeah, an act of war.
An act of war.
If some judge come against a state citizen and denied him his rights, privileges, and immunities, they just committed an act of war against the United States of America.
Right. that qualify?
In my opinion,
Is there any court cases that?
I've got some, but there's I've got a bunch of court cases I've read.
And treason needs to be
Wow,
brought
I
back
mean,
the way it was. And it actually, the definition of it be used properly, because anymore it's just like a word of and or the, because it has no meaning behind it anymore. Otherwise, hold these people accountable.
Let me ask you, Alex, what was your concern about what was the significance to you of trying to the 14th Amendment issue you brought up earlier? Like what's your practical concern or issue with it?
I don't understand what you're referring to with
Well, we were saying,
pointing.
like in the 14th Amendment, where it makes the distinction where clear to me. You said you couldn't see where there was a distinction, but I think it's been made. Grant made it.
Section 2.
Yeah.
I read it. I would have to go back. I read it as if they put the qualifiers, the male and the over 21 and being. I read it as an and being U.S. citizens, as if and. So they have to be male. They have to be 21.
To me, the and separates the two.
Because if I would, it's so ambiguous, because it would be more clear.
Yeah, but it doesn't say 21 years of age and being a U.S. citizen. It just says. It says.
In all practical purposes, now there's no sense of you personally even worrying about that, because it doesn't apply to you.
But I like to figure things out. I like to read. I like to find out.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking, like, what was the practical application? Was it relative to?
Just a practical. That's just how my mind works.
Oh, yeah. All right. So it was more of just a curiosity. In other words, you were reading it. Yeah, you were reading it one way, in your mind. Your mind's eye is interpreting the words to say, hey, if you're 21 and you're a U.S. citizen, as opposed to, hey, this applies to those people who are 21 and male citizens, inhabitants, and it applies to U.S. citizens.
Let me say this. I've got a Supreme Court case, U.S. versus Valentine. It says the only absolute and unqualified right of a U.S. citizen is the right of residency. Now, the right of residency was granted in the first paragraph of the 14th Amendment to U.S. citizens. And so a precondition for the right of residency is that U.S. citizenship status. Okay, so you come over to the next section and it talks about the male inhabitants, not the residents, the male inhabitants. The male inhabitants are the owners.
So if it's
and U.S. citizens just have U.S. citizens, they're the owners, and U.S. citizens, they have the right of residency, but they are not the inhabitants because they're not the owners.
Right. So then it's if that is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state who are 21 years of age, and if it's denied to citizens of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you read it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That is a good point. That is a good point that Grant just brought up, though, because the. We think Grant might be an angel. He speaks probably 50 languages.
He's AI. I'm telling you, this guy's AI.
College, and I just remember a bit of bits and pieces of it. That's been a long time ago. Ich spreche ein Kleindeutsch. Ich studiere vor ein Jahr.
You should sprechen ein größeres Deutsch. You should speak a bigger German.
Well, if I had time to study it, I would. If I had time, I'd go to Germany and learn it, but I don't have time.
Okay. Okay, so, but in the second section, yeah, denied reduce the number of male, because then they mix it, you know. In the first section, they say male inhabitants, and in the second, they say male citizens. So why are they mixing terms?
Because there's two different statuses of peoples. See, some human beings in the United States of America are people, and some human beings are persons.
I understand that. I just don't understand it in this legislative act where they should be very, very precise. And
They was in my opinion, they were very precise.
well, you know, at first they say male inhabitants, and they say citizens of the U.S. Then they say male citizens. So why don't they just repeat citizens of the U.S. to make it more clear?
I guess because in the first sentence that it includes wherever the male inhabitants is included, it would already be based upon the first sentence. The U.S. citizens would automatically be precluded in that same class because they were given the same rights in that second paragraph.
Actually, in the latter part of the sentence, it says male citizens 21 years of age in such state. So are they now U.S. citizens or state citizens?
Let's see right there. In such state.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about the states of the Union. They're talking about the people in their states.
So then why is the C small and not big?
Because
you
it's
have to look at it and see.
that was consistent. He said because they're talking about the citizens in their states.
It should be a capitalized C then. Why is it small?
No, a capital C is for the people. The
people are the state citizens, are they not?
Well, they could be referring to both citizenship statuses in the states. Because see, those U.S. citizens were given the right of residency. I mean, you can go read the slaughterhouse cases. They clearly laid it out. Anthony versus something. The Supreme Court clearly laid it out, the distinction between the citizenship classes.
I'm not disputing that. I'm just really looking at the words that they're using.
Well, they could have been clearer, I guess, because that thing was argued and argued and argued in Congress about the wording, how they're going to do this and how they're going to do that, and that was the compromise that they came up with.
Hey, Nick, I see Nick's got his hand up too. Sorry if I didn't see it quick enough, Nick. Go ahead, Nick. Nick in Texas.
Yes, I've had it up for forever. Just a quick question. It was when y'all first brought up the 14th Amendment. I'm under the impression that the 14th and all the Reconstruction amendments were never legally ratified. True or false?
I've heard a lot of people say that, and I guess if you could prove that you are a state citizen and change your status, then maybe if you can prove that, you would probably have a standing to take you to the Supreme Court.
Okay, thank you.
Can you prove it? But what you got to understand, in today's world, a large majority of the people, I'd say at least half of them, their legal existence in this country is predicated upon the 14th Amendment.
Right. Of course, the 16th and 17th Amendments as well. That's why I'm a big militia guy. I just don't think going through the courts is going to be the solution anymore. I mean, we're long past that now. They have a police state and we don't. So
yeah, except I think you remember, Nick, how over the last couple of years with Righteous Army, we were all about, lawful and peaceful and lawful.
Yes,
lawful
sure,
and peaceful.
sure.
But
yeah.
none of those lawful efforts that were being put forth, they didn't really lead to anything beyond, David Lester Strait and Anna von Reitz and, America's assemblies and people putting together their assemblies, all of which is completely void and irrelevant based on what we've discovered with Grant, because there's two jurisdictions. There's the federal territorial plain, which exists. They're allowed to be there. They do whatever they want. but they were created by we the people posterity. So only we the people posterity can even go to the Supreme Court to bring up matters and get them adjudicated properly.
Only the people as state citizens in regards to certain legal controversies would have standing to bring those things at issue before the court. Just like what you talked about, the 14th Amendment, I would say if you as a U.S. citizen, if you brought that into the Supreme Court or to any federal court, let's say you don't have standing to bring it, dismissed for lack of standing.
Yeah, and my son brings up that point a lot, Nick, with the people that brought up the case against Obama with his fake birth certificate. They went in there as U.S. citizens and had no standing, and the courts dismissed the case, indicating that they had no standing.
Well, they said they had no standing.
Right.
They said they lacked standing to bring the issue before the court. And see, like that recent court case where the state of Texas brought the issue about the election, the last election with Trump, where he got defeated. I read the court case and everything that the Texas Attorney General brought before him, and he brought reams of information, this and that. And the Supreme Court came back and said that the state of Texas failed to state a reason as to why they would have any claim as to what would occur in another state, any concern as to what would happen in another state.
Well, Texas is a whole different animal. I was born and raised in San Antonio.
I heard that. That's Eric. Eric says the same thing. I know. I know Texas was a republic.
Yeah, it was never the United States or the United States of America. Either one of those animals had no. Of course, I guess the corporation was after the Civil War, but they had no right to be able to annex a republic in 1845. 1845.
When Texas joined the Union, it no longer was a sovereign state, independent. It became subjugated to the United States of America. And
well, what I'm saying is it was illegal. It was illegal and unlawful that they even joined the Union in 1845. Is what I'm saying.
Well,
so it's all null and void.
Well, I would say if you can prove it and you had standing to bring the issue to an appropriate court of jurisdiction, it wouldn't be void.
Well, proving, not necessarily proving it, but getting the word out there, getting it past the Judaic Zionist media is going to be tough. Mike, when did you come across Grant?
I understand what you're saying more clearly than you know.
Well, because I don't know you. I was just asking Mike, when did you first meet Grant?
Right, but I'm just simply saying that the one way I think is that around all these difficulties and things that's been put in your path and things that's been there to obfuscate and trick you and deceive you. This is what I'm saying. If you're one of the people, you have the power.
Well, of course, all authority comes from God, and we got to bring Him in first. And if we don't, we're not going to get anywhere.
Well, I agree with that because Thomas Jefferson had said that we were under the laws of nature and nature's God, and that our rights are derived from God.
Yeah, but was Jefferson meaning the triune, the Trinity God, or his personal Masonic theist, whatever God? The God of the Bible? The God of the Bible?
Nick, I think that's another thing that's gone out there that's a falsehood is, and even people like Eric Dingus do it. They try to put many of the founding fathers, Jefferson and Franklin and others, in this bad light. And the reality is, no, these men were men of God. They were righteous men of God. You know, even Jefferson said that of all religions that he has seen, of all moral teachings, he sees Jesus Christ as being the number one leading authority of moral direction. And
But
and
then
we're,
you get into, but which religion or which
right, but
sect are you going to
well,
follow?
I think a
Because they
lot
all
of
have
that.
different interpretations of Jesus.
Well, of course, and I think, I mean, and just so you know, Grant, Nick is a devout Catholic, and I respect devout Catholics. I know there's a movement now because I guess the Catholic
What
Church,
happened?
my personal view on it is because the Catholic Church realizes that there are so many people that are calling out the Vatican and calling out the papacy, that they've kind of put forth this kind of thing of, hey, well, that's the bad Catholic Church, but the real Catholic Church is over here. Listen to us. We're the real Catholic Church. I'm not a fan of any institutionalized religion, Catholic or Protestant or otherwise. I do believe that the founders of this nation were men who were genuinely guided by God Almighty, the Creator, the God of life, the God of nature. And that's why I think that it's a good starting place and a good foundation to say nature's, the God of nature and nature's God, because God,
Reality.
right.
Well, then my question would be why
Go ahead,
why
Nick.
would I'll just interject one more thing. If these men, Jefferson, Madison, Washington, etc., were men of God, then why did they overthrow the 1781 Articles of Confederation, which provided for state sovereignty, and bring in a basically godless 1787 U.S. Constitution?
Because they had to create a government that had certain powers to deal with the collective of the states, and the federal government was given certain enumerated powers, and they were to control the commerce between the several states. They were to defend us during a war, engage in international diplomacy, whatever. They had certain rules that we needed them to do.
Right.
And the states still retain their sovereignty in the 10th Amendment. But in that plane. But that was all,
they were
thrown out the window. All of that was thrown out the window when Roosevelt created his appearance of reality.
Yeah,
well,
if you're not familiar with the quote, Nick, I would think you are, but when FDR said, this is a narrowly conceived effort to replace reality with the appearance of reality.
Yeah. Well, he said our path to recovery is an early conceived effort to exchange the appearance of reality for reality itself.
Well, I'm looking to go before FDR.
And let me say,
because they got rid of
religious belief.
They
have a religious belief.
Wait, Nick, hold on a second. Go ahead, Grant.
Okay, so you have a religious belief and a moral foundation, and I respect that. Because see, in our republic, if you came here, you have the right of freedom of religion. You can be a Catholic, you cannot be one. You can be a Protestant, you can be whatever religion or not a religion. It's called freedom.
But you can't exercise it unless you have muscle. Yeah. And they got rid of the muscle in 1903. 30 years before FDR maybe said that. I don't know when he said that, but and they knew that they need, so 32 years.
Okay.
So they needed to get rid of the militia.
Grant, hold on. Say your piece, Nick. Go ahead.
They needed to get rid of the militia 10 years before they took over the distribution of currency, because they knew that the people would get rid of them if they had well-regulated militias. So we need to get those state militias back in order to get rid of the synagogue.
Yeah, and just so you know, that's another thing, Grant. Nick is real up to par on the synagogue of Satan, the fake Jews, the money people.
That's what I was getting ready to tell him. Okay, so if you look at the religion of Christianity, who is the creator?
You mean who established Christianity?
Who's the creator of the heavens and the earth and everything therein?
The Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Okay, so That's what, and the sun comes up in the morning and the rain comes out of the sky. All this wonderful thing was created. It's a marvel. And can we change reality? Can I say the sun's not going to come up tomorrow?
No.
Can I tell it to stop raining when it's raining?
No.
No, I can't. You can't either. So, if you clearly know who said it and who he is or who he was, he said, our path to recovery. And see, and who did he say was the father of lies?
Who, when you say he, who you talking about?
Jesus Christ.
Okay, so yes, the father
of lies.
Lucifer / Satan.
That's right. Okay. So reality would be, to me, reality is the truth. It's the absolute truth. There's no question for me to deny the reality I'm walking around in. Okay. So who created the lie? Or the lie, which would be the appearance of reality. You see, the appearance of reality is a lie, and reality is the truth. Now, I'll go back to what he said. Our path to recovery is an early conceived effort to exchange the appearance of reality, the lie, with reality, truth.
Okay, so is there a question there? Or?
Well, I'm just making a point.
Oh, okay. I
just, who you're dealing with and what they did.
Oh, I know we're dealing with principalities and powers. That's what St. Paul said.
Yeah, you've been deceived, and
well, I haven't. I don't. Yeah.
If it were possible, even the elect would be deceived.
Correct. So he'll shorten the days, but who knows when that's going to happen?
I didn't get to this place just by myself. I had guidance. Something within me. No. And
well, I mean, do you believe in the Trinity, or are you a Trinitarian Christian? Just a question.
I believe
it doesn't matter to me.
The Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost.
Okay.
Yep. And it's not a matter. I won't say everything that's happened to me, but it's not a matter of belief to me. Because I can say I know, but I'm not going to go there. But anyway, all I'm doing is pointing out, hopefully, some truths, and you can take it or you can leave it.
Yeah, and by the way, Nick, this ties in to, in a nutshell, the biblical equation of is Jacob and the Israelites, and the journey through the wilderness, through the mountains, the Caucasus Mountains into Europe, over here, creating this nation under God that has been infiltrated and hijacked by the synagogue of Satan. So we're all on the same page, but we have to be careful about, we have to understand that when we're talking about blood, we're talking about privity of blood. There's a tremendous amount of things that could be said about that. If God has a people, right, and that people itself is based upon essentially a genetic existence, a blood, and that people is still existing today as the remnant, then that people can, as far as I'm concerned, can only be identified, by, of course we know, you know them by their fruits and all that, but can be identified by their intentions and their efforts on what they're endeavoring to do as men and women, right? To bring back into proper perspective whatever earthly or worldly authorities exist, because this gets into a deep conversation about government. You have people out there that are like, oh, I'm anti-government. We don't need a government. The people can just live free. I've got a good friend of mine. He's kind of, that libertarian, walk barefoot in the grass and absorb the energy from the earth kind of spirit-minded guy. And he says, we don't need any government. And I said, no, actually, we do need government, because if we went the approach you're saying, well, we don't need a government, people could just all live free, then you're going to have people coming into the little villages, raping and pillaging and doing all the things that they want to do, because it's going to become the survival of the fittest to the ultimate. It's going to become the strong survive. So now I can go in, the bad people will prevail because there's no government. The righteous people have to have a government and a strong military, the whole 9 yards, because of the bad that exists. Now that's in this world that we're operating in. So we can get into other philosophical and spiritual talks about the new heaven, the new earth, and we'll you know, where's the place where there is no more death and there is no more destruction. But when it comes to reality, again, using the word reality, what we do know is here we are, and we have to make sense of it while we're here. We have to do something, right? Which Nick is on board with, Grant's certainly on board with. Everybody who's, you know, ever, you know, really put forth their efforts over the last few years to try to stand up for their rights and their dignity, and has proclaimed God, even though people have done it from different perspectives, whether they're Catholic or they're, you know, non-denominational, or they're, you know, some form of a Protestant. The people that are putting forth an effort to say we need God's laws and God's ways for humanity to prevail. We can't have an immoral society. We need a moral society. And most of the founding fathers, if not all of them, said that. I've got quotes from quite a few of them that are often blacklisted. And you know, as you know, I'm very, very intimately acquainted with Eric Dingus, Nick, and Nick knows of Eric. Eric, I've always kept him on the back burner as a friend. He considers me a friend. He's done a lot for me. I've done things for him. He has a position on some things that are highly questionable in my mind and in my son's mind, that essentially, to pinpoint it, goes to kind of this new world order, one world government, you know, kumbaya. We're all sovereign. We're all one in Christ. Well, that all sounds good. But again, in this reality that we live in, it really comes down to law.
Right, exactly. So is it going to be a Christian law or non-Christian law?
Well, we would
there's plenty of room.
God's
There's plenty of land on the earth that we can all have our own whatever, you know.
Right, well,
but I'm looking to establish a Christian state,
right,
with a defense force. In
right.
Texas, it would have been 6 billion. You know, we have about 6 million.
Yeah. Nick is big on the
age.
militia, also, Grant. Just so you know, big militia guy. But Grant, go ahead and fill in the blanks.
Well, without a government, you know, your guy that wants to lay in the grass and do all that stuff, yeah, we could all do that. But I can assure you that it wouldn't be long till you'd be under probably Chinese communist rule.
Exactly.
Because they would invade you.
Indeed.
They would invade you and take your land.
And that's where the self-defense comes in.
That's right.
We're not looking to.
If supposed to organize, you know, the government they created was to provide for the common defense. That's right.
Defense, exactly. Yeah, right. I mean, I'm sure you and I agree. You know, execute the laws of the Union, repel invasions, and what's the third thing?
In the Republic,
you know, it's not to go overseas and, you know, bring democracy to Muslims countries or
right. Well, yeah, let me interject on that, Nick, because Grant hasn't said a lot about it tonight, but he's well aware of the fact that he would say, and maybe I'll let him say, there are plenty of things that Congress has done that I would venture to say were unconstitutional.
Oh, sure.
And
no doubt.
And so I think Grant's position, and I concur with it, that last straw we have, you know, because we were always talking about with Eric Dingus and even David Straits and all the people involved with all these movements, oh, we're going to be lawful and peaceful, but we're going to use the law and we're going to, you know, become state nationals. There was never really any pinnacle, you know, tip of the spear resolution to that. It's come forth now by the grace of God through this man, Grant, and he knows of others. He's not the only man, but he's had as he indicated, he's shared some personal stories with us. He has his communion with God Almighty. He's had visions, he's had dreams, he's had experiences, and the amount of knowledge he brings to the table to put into perspective this reality that there are a blood people, privity, who founded this nation under God and his laws, nature's God. And those people are the ones that have all rights, privileges, and immunities. Those people are the ones that have standing to go into the Supreme Court. And as Grant often says, it's been an awful long time since the people have gone into the Supreme Court. My son has been working his ass off, Nick, over the last year. It's mind-blowing how much he's learned. He's already filed federal cases in federal court, and he's kicked ass. I mean, I've read his briefs and blew doors on the Dade County attorneys here in Miami-Dade County. He kicked their ass, and he was combating with them. The judge was agreeing really with everything he was saying and telling the county attorneys to answer back to him. So finally, Josh was done with the games, and he submitted his entire paperwork with his status saying, I'm a state citizen of the republic, a man on the land, a living man. Here's my birth certificate. Here's my heritage. Here's my birthright. Here's who I am. And at that point, the judge, all of a sudden out of the blue, said, oh, I'm going to have to dismiss this case. I have no jurisdiction. The court has no jurisdiction to deal with it, because he was dealing in their plane of jurisdiction, that federal territorial plane, even in that federal court. So he knows what he's doing. He's now going to take the case to the Supreme Court. But before he does that, there's a process that Grant has that we're working on. Josh is working on it, and Grant's working on it, to put it together in a way where they can establish the reality of that posterity blood, privity of blood, birthright, state citizenship, and get that substantiated by the courts, get the identification, the passport that verifies it, get it changed in the system so that's who you are. And when we know we have that system down pat, that's why I'm putting forth the effort, making out the call now to all of America, for all Americans who even suspect that they fall into that category, to come forward, contact us, start listening to these meetings, call, communicate, send emails, get on our mailing list, listen to the videos, and start looking into what you can do to do your research and to validate your background, your history, your bloodline posterity to the founding fathers who created this nation, so that you can get in on that and be one of those. So there's people that need to be educating themselves, just like my son's been doing. It's like a snowball effect. He's getting smarter and smarter and brighter, and he's getting more information, and he's learning the procedures. He's reading the Supreme Court procedures for how to file in the Supreme Court, and he's getting ready as a man to go into the Supreme Court on his own to bring these cases in the court. Now, Grant, again, I'll reiterate for this record that Grant's not making any legal advice. He's not giving legal advice. He's not giving legal counsel. He's not an attorney. He's not any of that. We're all here discussing our own personal, intimate knowledge, awareness, understanding, and comprehension of law and Supreme Court rulings and the Constitution and rights and privity of blood and sovereignty, and what we can do to restore that and to be able to right the ship. That is the ultimate last possibility we have in terms of lawful and legal and peaceful.
I would say we do so under our First Amendment right of freedom of speech.
Right on.
Which Trump is going to be suppressing. He's already said he's going to remove, whatever that means, Jew haters. So you can't criticize Israel or the ADL or AIPAC. I mean, it's going to be very interesting 4 years.
Well, all the more reason we need the posterity to come together and to stand up and unite and organize. We need to grow as an organization, because it's also safety in numbers concept, right? The more of us there are, the better. We need more and more and more of us uniting and organizing as posterity. And on that note, Nick, I'm not sure where you stand. There are processes. There were processes even within the Republic for people to be grafted in, if you will, to be what's it called, immigration, right, type naturalization. Thank you. In the Republic. At this point, my biggest call would go out to all these people that are a part of the Republic for the United States of America, because I think that they were sincere at heart in what they were endeavoring to do, but they missed the boat. They were out there telling governors to step down that had every right to be where they're at. They were not addressing the issue of privity of blood and posterity. So I'm hoping that there's enough smart people within the Republic to reorganize and reconstitute what they've been doing. And that's assuming that they are not a completely controlled oppositional force, because that has been my suspicion for the last couple of years, is that when they came back on the scene and started trying to pick things up, it was all this top down, we're the authority. They seem to be very opposed to this grassroots, Exodus 18 model of, working your way up. But they claim, to not be opposed to that they're all for that. But they need to recognize these planes of jurisdiction. I think that's what they just were ignorant of and clueless about. But it's totally relevant. It's completely relevant. You're either over there or you're over here. And the over here right now has no government, let alone enough smart, educated, intelligent people like my son and Grant and a handful of others that are able to step into that Supreme Court with standing so that we can start getting things done. And again, that's my purpose here, is to help build this organization. So if you can help us with that, Nick, too, that'll be great. And I'd encourage you, Nick, whatever you could do to find out what your own blood right may be, in terms of how far back your family goes. Did you have, patriarchal grandparents that were sitting side by side with Washington or signing the Constitution, or in the colonies fighting against the Brits, that were all on board with this new nation we created?
Well, my background is Irish, English, and German, so I don't think so.
Well, by blood, I can say you are.
A lot of Irish here when the Republic was being established.
Well, I mean, they didn't. They
There was
came
a lot of
over.
Irish here when the Republic was being established.
Right. And on that note, as I know you know, Nick, this nation was created by white European men who created this nation for white European men. In fact, my son recently read to me, was it out of the Black's Law or Bouvier's? It says that right in the dictionary. There's a what?
I think it was the definition of the word citizen.
Definition of the word citizen. So, your bloodline itself is, you're a true Israelite, is the bottom line. You're from the tribes. There's no doubt. As far as being here in the Republic at a certain time where you can claim privity of blood back to your forefathers being the ones who founded this nation, I don't know. What would you say about that, Grant?
Well, there's that court case. I just always go back to what the Supreme Court said. If I say something, I want a backing by a court case, and that's that Happenstead Supreme Court case. Basically said if your parents were citizens in the nation at the time of its creation, then there is no doubt of your citizenship as their lineage, basically.
Right.
If you derive from the people, there is no doubt of your citizenship. And the only citizenship that existed when this nation was formed was a citizenship that was recognized in Article 1 of the Treaty of Paris.
Exactly.
There was no 14th Amendment.
Right. Welcome, Linda. Linda just came on to the Zoom call. Linda, if you want to say hi.
Oh, just hello and thank you. Sorry, I'm just getting to this, so I'm sorry for the late
Fine.
entrance. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to upload this to YouTube and some other platforms. You'll find it at the bottom of the website. If you haven't been there yet, that's taps-pma.com.
Okay.
And just to memorize it easy, that's TAPS stands for True American Posterity Sovereigns hyphen the middle line PMA for Private Membership Association or Private Ministerial Association.com or .org. Either one gets you there. And you'll find our videos and our phone conversations and meetings at the bottom of the page, as well as other information on the page that'll let you know what we're doing. Linda, are you a woman of posterity from the USA? Does your patriarchal grandparents go back to the founding of the nation?
Well, I was thinking when I clicked on the link, because I initially on your initial invitation to it, I remember thinking, oh, I'm going to do this. And then I remember reading, and it can't go, my history does not go back to the founding of the nation. No, it would be migrations after that point. But we've been here for, I think my mother traced it back to like early 1700s.
Yeah, well, if it's early 1700s, it would be fun for.
That would be before 1776.
Well, yes, before, I said early 1700s. I mean, early 1800s. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that.
Okay.
Yeah, early 1800s.
Do you have any evidence of where your forefathers and mothers came and were granted citizenship at that time?
Well, I just know they are primarily European. I do have some. My dad had a little more Irish in him, but they came through the great grandparents came through New York. When they came into the country.
Well, you were in good hands in New York, because that's where my family came from, and my son's done a tremendous amount of research. And our family, my direct bloodline, was considered the first white settlers in New York, in Albany, New York, and goes way back. So many of the settlers were obviously coming in there. But I'm sorry for interrupting you there, Grant. Go ahead.
Well,
if she had.
Maybe I shouldn't be here then, because I really can't go back far enough. And I remember in reading in the original text, I thought, I really can't go to this because I can't trace it back that far. But then, time has passed and I've been busy. And then I came and I saw the notice to get on, and it was like, oh, yes, I was wanting to check that out. But then I forgot that I had already ruled myself as I really shouldn't be here, because I can't historically claim it from the criteria that you presented in the original email.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that you shouldn't be here, because one of the things I say as well is all Americans should be rooting for posterity to rise.
Absolutely.
So you can certainly come in and pick things up on the website. You're welcome to invite people to come to the meetings. You're welcome to come into the meetings. And again, there is as well the reality that we were just talking about it just before you came on, that even the republic, the constitutional republic for the United States of America, had there goes the word again, Grant. I keep wanting to say migration, immigration. Help me. Naturalization. Thanks. That word just keeps evading me. But, there were naturalization processes in place, which, again, our true government, the Republic for the United States of America, is simply the seats are not inhabited.
Right.
But it still exists. And I'm sure there's a process within the Republic for the United States of America for naturalization, which, in my opinion, would certainly include you.
Yeah.
Going back to that point. So that's
one aspect that I could inject, and I don't know if my great grandfather was married to 100% Cherokee Indian woman.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Grant, what do you have to say about that?
Well, there was a lot of people here that were married into Cherokee, but a lot of those people that did fought in the Revolutionary War.
Right.
So, the Watauguans, if you watched Braveheart, you saw how those Scotsmen hated the crown. Well, those the Watauguans that settled first in northeast Tennessee, they were the ones that fought at the battle over there at the King's Hill, I think is what it's called. But anyway, that was a turning point in the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
So
Kingston.
a lot of those, they were most of them were Scotsmen, and they hated the crown.
Yeah.
And see, the British general in Charleston, he was doing a psychological war, and he announced that he was going to send a regiment of British troops east or to west. Well, word got out. He didn't have any intentions to do that. So, but anyway, it got to the Watauguans, and if you watch Braveheart, how they hate. So they said they came there to get away. So when they heard that, they got together, and all the men left and packed up their guns and everything, left, and they marched east. And then they met the British, and that was a major turning point in the Revolutionary War because they defeated the British. It was a psychological effect because a lot of people were teetering. You know, they were the Tories that wanted to stay loyal to the crown, and then they were the patriots who wanted to set themselves free from it.
Sure.
Luckily, the patriots won, and they got King George III to sign the Treaty of Paris.
Sure. But to answer your question, no,
they would not be a United States of America.
that's true.
Go ahead, Linda. You were going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say when you said if you watched Braveheart, and it was like part of me wanted to watch it, but the other part of me, I know it's true. I know it. I know the reality of our wars and all this stuff, but I just have a really hard time with all that violence. So I did not watch it. So thank you for sharing the story with me.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Tave has his hand raised. And then we'll let this go so we don't keep Grant again up too late, and we'll get back to it again next Tuesday. But go ahead, Tave. You got a question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Grant, with the letter C being capitalized and the other one the small case, can we say that is more like the pronunciation if you were to put somebody's name down in all capitals, or because the emphasis on it being capital would be the more important of the two? You would think so.
If you understand captation, so the Constitution has to be looked at through the lens of the common law, and that was ruled by the Supreme Court. So captation, because they wrote that with specificity and particularity. And see, union is capitalized, people is capitalized. When you capitalize, it's my understanding when you capitalize a noun, it specifies it. Okay. You can say people, and I could mean every person on the planet.
Right.
But when you capitalize it, they specified it. And they
said
they created this nation in order to ensure the blessings of liberty for themselves and their posterity.
Have they challenged that at all? Were that, have they had a problem with that where they say it because it was a capital or lowercase? Has that been a problem ever?
But that all cap name represents that entity created by the birth certificate. It's a registered organization where they gave you an artifice to operate in their jurisdiction.
Yeah, and you're familiar with that.
Otherwise, the reason the 14th Amendment was because of the Dred Scott decision.
That's what I was trying to remember. If you said Dred Scott
decision, the only way it could be overturned would be the Supreme Court would have to reverse its decision under that controversy, or they had to create an amendment to the Constitution, which is what they did with the 14th Amendment. So they created another class of citizenship.
Gotcha. You guys are talking about the founding fathers, and I found a quote from Jefferson. It was pretty, I don't even know how to say what it did to me. It made me sit down and think for a minute, because I know Mike knows that I was a long time Christian, and I still believe in a God, the one Almighty. And I do believe now that the laws of nature are what we are supposed to go by. And when I read this quote from Jefferson saying, the biggest enemy of the true Greek democracy and the laws of nature is the fledgling Protestant movement. Therefore, I don't see God anywhere in our Constitution written. These guys knew that they wanted to separate that because of the different branches of how this has ended up turning out being, where you have so many divisions of Christianity believing and saying one thing, where they don't want that involved, but they want the one true God's, the laws of nature. And I think
to
that
me, if you go to Christ, he said, "Consider the lilies of the field; they neither spin nor sow. Yet Solomon in all his glory was never arrayed as one of these. Consider the birds of the air; they neither sow or reap, yet their Father
right.
feeds them."
Right. And that's why
That's in essence, that's the laws of nature, and nature's God.
and that's a big reason why a lot of them are considered to be deists as opposed to Christians. You could almost say a deist is a pure Christian, because a deist is somebody who's really trying to look specifically to the one and only true God Almighty. And
and that's,
I don't know any
and
Christians.
that label, a lot of Christians put labels on those guys as like being a deist would being almost pagan. When you understand, I always thought pagan, when I heard that word, was satanic or evil, but yet when you look pre-Christianity, you understand that everybody was a pagan because they were worshiping multiple gods for the harvest, the sun, the moon. It wasn't necessarily demonic, but
Right.
the subversion of what has come from Judaism, of all things, has turned this world to where we're at this point now that we've got to let this come to a head and say, hey, we've got to make a decision whether we're going to go with this law the way it was, the way it should have been, the way they wrote it, and follow it. And that's where I'm at on that. And I'm glad to hear that you guys understand where I'm coming from, because a lot of people get me confused thinking, well, you're not a Christian, well, what are you then? And,
the fake Christianity versus true Christianity thing, and the multiplicity of fake Christianity sects and cults out there does make it difficult for people, so that most people throw their hands in the air and just say Christianity. They put Christianity on the whole in a bad light. But I always term it as there's true Christianity and fake Christianity by design.
And so many of our American people are just completely just hoodwinked by what we are talking about as far as true Christianity and what they believe in, because they're going the wrong way, I believe.
Right. Go ahead, Grant.
Well, I think the beauty of it is that they created a nation where Congress cannot establish a religion or prohibit the free exercise thereof. So they left it open
which is
to
Congress.
each individual to give you the freedom to choose your personal relationship with God, the Creator, ever how you see. It's your business.
Now the problem,
it's not the government's business.
Yeah, the problem with that, though.
Well, you say government.
Hold on. The problem with that,
I just, I got to jump in because I got to go. Okay. I'm going to hang up after I make this point. The First Amendment applies to Congress, correct? Not the states. The states got enveloped somehow in the Supremacy Clause or the 14th. I don't know. But the original thing was states could have a state religion if they wanted. Correct? In 1787?
Yeah, that's one of the key principles to understand, that the Constitution for the United States of America that our forefathers created established legal relations between that new federal government and the citizens of the several states. Now, the constitutions of the several states of the Union established legal relations between the state and the citizens of that state. And that's where the play comes in between U.S. citizens and state citizens.
And the relativity of that to Nick's point about a state religion is what?
Well, I guess that's just like what I was saying the other day. In the Slaughterhouse case, that was the first case that went to the Supreme Court concerning the 14th Amendment. And in that court case, they said that, basically you made a mistake in how you came into the court in relation to the 14th Amendment. Because what the court said in that court case was that U.S. citizens in legal relations to the state of Louisiana in that situation had no privileges or immunities, and that the first 8 amendments to the Constitution did not apply to them in legal relations to the state of Louisiana. And I agree with them. That has nothing to do with them in relation to that state. When we were in a republic.
So you're saying that the first 8 amendments had nothing to do with the.
You can't, because the Constitution of the United States of America established legal relations between the citizens of the several states and the federal government. The constitutions of the several states of the Union established the legal relations between their state and the citizens of that state. So you can't go in when you're having a controversy with a state and try to bring in the federal constitution in certain instances, because that doesn't apply. That didn't establish the legal relations that are in question is the one between the citizens and the state, not between the citizens of the several states and the United States.
So you're therefore suggesting that in the republic, there could be a state religion, and the federal government can do nothing about it.
A state citizen could go and say, well, that's because, see, once the states joined the Union, then that becomes applicable to them. So they basically had to agree to certain things when they joined the Union. However, but these new citizens in legal relations to the states had no privileges or immunities, or the first 8 amendments of the Constitution did not apply to them, and that's what was ruled by the Supreme Court in the slaughterhouse cases, and that's never been overturned.
Right, but I don't know if it's just me, and I feel like that everything you've been saying, Grant, has been almost like, not that you're doing it on purpose, but like evading the initial question of a state religion, trying to get.
Well,
in other words, Grant, let's just
do it like this, you guys. Try this, Grant.
With a state citizen, but not a U.S. citizen. In other words, the state could have denied the religion to those U.S. citizens. They could, if their constitution didn't specifically say that, then they could deny them the ability to have freedom of religion, or they could deny them the right to keep and bear arms.
Yeah, and one of the other points that I was going to make prior to Nick was the big problem with this freedom of religion anyway. And you said it well, Grant. You said people are free to worship whatever God they want. Well, that means, they can have homosexual, transgender preachers in the church, because that's their religion.
Yep.
And that's
can we try this to plug this in, Mike?
Hold on.
This for an idea. Okay. I will go ahead.
Because that's problematic, is it not? I mean, for those of us who are trying to assert, God and nature's God and Christianity and Christ is King and all these ideas, there seems to be a bit of a problem there with freedom of religion.
Well, that's the way it is. But they can't make me believe that.
Right, but they can mess up the minds of our children by promoting it in schools and on television and on movies and video games and every other form of media.
But that's because your kids aren't your own. They belong to the state. In the republic, your children belong to you.
Right. So people would make the argument, oh, your children are your responsibility, not the state's. Homeschool them and keep them away from that stuff and raise them properly, and you don't have to worry about it. But,
then I guess you could say that in the republic, the common law would come into play. See, the common law is still in full force and effect in the several states of the Union.
And doesn't common law?
It's not in the several states of the United States.
And doesn't common law uphold canonical law?
That's what I'm saying.
And therefore, where it says homosexuals should be stoned to death,
Here, Mike, plug this in and see if this works. Let's take a sanctuary city, for instance, instead of religion. The states now, like where I'm at, they have adopted this policy where, like a religion, they can make the choices on what they want to do, where they let in and harbor these invaders. Now, outside of that, You would have, like we're talking about, that you can't do that. Why? You know, are we at? Does that make any sense? What I'm trying
Randy,
to say
you
there?
have to
Or how?
understand the split that occurred. And see, if you're a U.S. citizen, you have no standing to bring that at issue. However, if you're a state citizen of one of those states, you would have standing because the states cannot grant citizenship. And there's nowhere in the Constitution that the states are allowed to bring foreigners into the state. Show me in the
Into the
Constitution
country, right? Yeah,
granted
into the
that power
country.
to them.
Maybe it's just a mess in
Show
Ohio
me
then.
where
Wait, hold on,
power that
Grant.
they could bring foreigners
Hold
into
on.
our country.
Right, hold on, Grant, because I got the answer. Because Tave said something, and
Okay.
and even with what you said, because we said this before, Grant, and we both agree. Yeah, they can bring him in, Tave, and they got to keep him in that 10-mile square called Washington D.C.
So it's not Ohio because they're deeming themselves sanctuary separate from the federal government, like they're claiming, because they're totally telling these federal agents, go pound salt. You know, you're not coming in here. You're not doing your things in there. And yet they harbor and invite them to,
That's right. In fact, lawfully, the only place that they can have a sanctuary of any sort for illegal immigrants would be in the territorial
take them all
jurisdictions.
in that 10-mile. Yes.
Which I hate to say it would include some national parks.
Well, but for the most part,
the United States has never enforced it.
That's the problem. That's where we're at. Yes, and
Donald Trump in his role as president, yeah, he can go in there and he can arrest them, and they can't stop him.
I would stand right behind him and I'd say, absolutely do it.
Yep.
They should do it.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, because literally we have people that are coming in and committing crimes against citizens of the state or the country, and whichever way you want to be here, but legally, lawfully. But yet the politicians, because they get federal funding, provide these people this refuge in my city. I should be able to go down there and pull them up and hang them up out of the...
you and created a tax burden upon you to create money off of, which they then turn around and use it against you to destroy you.
That's exactly right.
But
Yeah,
Trump stopped those fundings last week.
But he hasn't stopped the cities from letting them come in or remove the ones that are
I
here.
know, but he's taken the first step in it by stopping the funding.
And we don't have anywhere to put them. That's the problem. I've been saying that from day one.
Yeah, just wait.
Yeah, but I mean, it'll just be the first step because they're refusing to let ICE come in and do the job. And so by stopping the funding, it's just, one step in the way he likes to work deals.
Hold on, Linda, great point. Dave, good point. But here's the real problem we have. Trump's going to do all these good things like he did last time, but guess what? He's going to be out of office, and they're going to put in some Democrat who's going to start shipping him in again, and then they're going to get another president who's going to ship him out again, and another president's going to ship him in again. That's the game they're playing.
Well, I know it's a game.
The only way we're going to really resolve this, Linda, is for you to help us gather every posterity that you can, Tave, Ohio, Nick in Texas. Clinton was on here earlier in North Carolina. We need to get the posterity, those who have standing to go into the Supreme Court and bring these issues up. That's what Grant and my son are working on. I'm working on that with them. But my son, I'm telling you, the Spirit of God's come on my son. I'm just blown away at his capacity for reading, memorizing, learning, researching. He's going over right now the Supreme Court rules and procedures for filing cases. Grant's given him a ton of information that he's reviewing. I don't know how he does it. It's mind blowing to me, but he's doing what needs to be done. He's going to work that out with Grant. And that's kind of our first step too. In fact, they wanted to just keep everything on the low and just do this first. But I told him, I said, no, Grant, like you're right. We need an organization. We need people power. It's power in numbers. So I'm, putting forth.
Mike, is it safe to say we got about 2 years right now as everything sits and everything's moving forward before changes coming through voting in the next cycle, where if it does change up again, the last 2 years of Trump's presidency, he's not going to have the power he has right now to do what you're talking about. So we're in I'd say a 2-year window. Am I correct in saying that possibly?
Well, yes and no. Yes, in the sense of urgency, and the sooner the better.
Right.
Who was that? Did you want to say something, Nick or Grant?
No, it wasn't me.
All right. So I would say, you know, this Trump issue is problematic, first of all, right? Because there's those of us who are in the Q psyop and the Trump train still, and oh, Trump's going to save the world. And then there's those of us who used to support him, but we jumped off the Trump train because we know he's playing good cop, bad cop with Biden, and he's just helping to establish the new world order, one world government. But then at the same time, we see him doing things that we all agree with. We see him putting in Supreme Court justices that say that they're going to go by the Constitution the way it was written. So there's a lot of psychological operations going on, you know, and exactly. My son made the ultimate point for me that I want to make is Trump himself may be deceived. He may not even know a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. A lot of the politicians might not know a lot of the stuff we're talking about. What, Josh? Right. Josh said it again. The very Bible says the very elect will be deceived. So one of the things we need to do is, because Grant made a good point last week, that there's all these, I'll call them Q psyops, saying that Trump's going to reestablish the republic. Trump's not really the president of the corporation. He's the actual president of the republic. And Grant makes a good point. Who voted him in? I'm posterity. I didn't know anything. What posterity put him in office? What?
Right.
Yeah. So what genuine posterity of the republic put him in office?
No state citizens voted for him.
Right. Everybody was a registered voter that put him there, which means they were in that federal territorial jurisdiction, which means he has nothing to do with the republic by law.
And with confidence, I will say this under the circumstances of which I witnessed in 2017. This Donald Trump converted to Judaism in the White House in 2017. That's a fact.
Right. And,
now
and
there's an agent of the problem.
Right. And there's 2 points to be on that is some people will argue, oh, he's just, you know, infiltrating the enemy camp, right? So he can call him out. That's a big Q psyop thing. I don't really buy that. The other thing is and I do favor this. I believe he's probably deceived. Him and our great president in Florida, Ron DeSantis, they're deceived. They're believing these Christian mainstream narratives about the Jews being God's chosen people. They really believe that. They believe that nation state of Israel over there is really God's people. They believe that. And because they believe it, that means they're deceived. They don't know any better. Now, the question is, will God open their eyes? Will they wake up? Will they research? Will they see the truth, hear the truth, and know the truth, and love the truth, and go with the truth? That's yet to be seen.
We can only hope, right?
We can only hope.
Need your strength.
You know, in the APAC stuff and all that stuff, you know, you just have to look at it like they bought him out. They paid for all his casinos when he went bankrupt a long time ago. Has he been bought and paid for that long? You know, it's disheartening to me because I love the deportation thing he's doing. To me, I just don't see, we can't round them all up because we don't have anywhere to put them. We can't fly that many planes and put that many people on planes. We can't put them in our jails. They're overcrowded.
Right. And that's why it goes back to, again, the bottom line is we need the posterity to rise. Yes. That's what I'll call, you know, my son and I and several others we know, we do look at the Bible very cryptically, you know, like Jesus walking on water. Grant can make some great points of that. Maybe he'll interject with that. But a lot of what we hear in the Bible is cryptic, and even resurrection. To me, the resurrection is God's people waking up and righting the ship. And right now, God's people can only be identified as the posterity because they're the ones who founded this nation. Now, that doesn't mean they're the only ones that are God's people. They're just those of God's people who founded this nation. Because again, Linda, her bloodline goes back to the true tribes of Israel, and so does Nick's, and so does Taves. All of us, we go back to Germany, we go back to Ireland, we go back to, you know, European descent, which is where, again, the Israelites traveled up through the Caucasus Mountains into Europe and populated Europe, and they came over here and established this nation.
So Trump could be deceived about who he's using.
Yeah, Saxon means sons of Isaac.
Right.
Isaac's sons.
Right.
Saxons.
Yeah. So you know, we are still in the time of the awakening. We're still in the apocalypse right now, which is the awakening, the awareness coming to
Do you
light.
think it's possible that Trump could be deceived about who the Jews actually are, the Israelites?
Oh yeah, just Trump could still be in that deceived mindset. He thinks the Jews are really it. He thinks that Jews are God's people. See, that's a big part of it. It's those of us.
Mainstream Christianity has taken the Israelites and applied them as being the Jews, which the Bible makes it very clear that they're a distinct group of people. You know, you had the 12 tribes of Israel, and then you had Jews, and they had nothing to do with one another. But what mainstream Christianity states now is that anybody coming from or descending from the 12 tribes of Israel is a Jew, and that's just not the case.
Right. I call it the Jew psyop, you know, which I unraveled over the last 2 years. And even though Dan, who became essentially an enemy of mine, you know, by stealing, by encouraging my wife to divorce me, and then lying as a notary public, knowing, you know, encouraging my wife to go after me for alimony based on my benefits, and just the guy's you know, it's sad. I mean, I need to do a whole video on that guy, because I've got all these videos out there calling Dan my right hand man and my wingman, because I put my faith in him, but he turned out to be a complete hypocritical, two-faced, backstabbing, narcissistic liar. Yeah, I just got an email yesterday from this woman that he was courting, that he thought that she made him think he was in love with her, telling her how he's in love with Monica, my ex-wife. He's in love with her now. You know, it's just sickening, the whole thing. But the
I
guy
can't
did
believe
make
that. You know, Mike, so much I was with you guys through all this, and I cannot believe him. I
Yeah,
just
I
can't
know.
believe it because he
It's
was
sick.
so convincing.
I know, it's sickening, but he nonetheless is a man that did have a great history and knowledge. All the things he ever said when he came on the shows about the Israelites and who they are, and his biblical knowledge is stellar. But as a man, you know, what's ironic to me was he always used to tell the story about, what was it, Moab? What was the king? No, what was it that where they were, the one that came in and put the spear through
That was the story of Phineas.
Phineas, yeah, and put the spear through both of them when they were in the bed, because he was sleeping with a woman outside of his. And what's funny about that is Dan used to tell me my wife was not an Israelite, because she was,
Well, the story
you know,
goes that
a Venezuelan
the
and
Israelites,
Italian.
they were undergoing a curse because they had turned from God, like they so often did throughout the Old Testament. And Phineas came into leadership and, you know, basically encouraged the Israelites to go through a time of mourning, you know, and fasting and repentance. And during the middle of that fasting period, one of the Israelites went into a tent with a Canaanite or foreign woman and went to bed with her as they were in the middle of fasting and prayer. And Phineas found out about it and went into the tent and drove a spear down through the middle of them.
Right.
And then God blessed Phineas forevermore.
Yeah.
So
And Dan always used to tell that story. And now here he is, you know, in there
He's the one
talking
laying
about
in
how
bed, right? Now he's got
Yeah.
the spear through him.
Right. Yeah. I feel like I should be the guy when he's on top of my ex-wife with the spear, putting it through both of them, you know, but I don't care. I've let it go. She made her choice, and she's just using him the way she used me. And he just wants to get his, you know, rocks off. And what's really amazing to me is how even in Josh and my presence, one day he blew up. You know, Josh and I looked at each other like, holy crap, that's Dan. We never knew he was like that. He had like this angry look on his face. And he goes, all women are whores and bitches. And he was like with a real angry voice. So I'm just wondering, is the day going to come where I'm going to hear about, you know, my ex-wife's son's going to be calling me in tears, crying, saying, Mike, help me. Dan is beating up Monica, you know, or some kind of crap like that. Because the guy's, you know, just he plays
An
this
agent of evil, Mike. He's an agent of evil.
He is definitely an agent of evil, but he plays his cards. But anyway, I kind of went off on a rant there just because, you know, and like I said, I almost feel like I got to do a video, because I feel bad now that for 2 years I was doing videos saying how that guy was my right-hand man and my wingman. But yeah,
you should do the video, Mike. And you know why I think you should? Because I can distinctly remember several times where he and he was your wingman. put several people out on a platform and drug them across the coals. And basically they didn't call back. And if they did, it was a long time after the fact. And because of that, and yeah, I can see where, yes, you should do that and just justify yourself. And so that those people, if they do hear it, understand that, hey, you made the mistake by making that guy. We all make mistakes, and that you're owning up to it, basically.
Yeah.
And when letting you know who he is. Yes.
Yeah, I always do own up to my mistakes, and that was a big one I made.
The only thing a man does.
Yeah. But, you know, I guess it was hard not to bring him up because we're talking about these issues of the Israelites. And again, that's one area where, you know, much of the conversations I had about that were in Zoom meetings that I had with him on, and he was providing a lot of information on that. Although my son's done a tremendous amount of research in that area as well, and he's very well versed on it. Grant as well. He's well aware of who the true Israelites are. So the point we were making was that Trump probably doesn't. You know, Ron DeSantis, you know, these guys are probably in a delusional frame of mind where they really think that this nation state of Israel is God's like people, you know, like those are the Jews, like they're God's people. But they're not. They're the fake Jews. They're the imposters. They're the revelation.
He would put us to death. Remember what he said? Trump said, bring back the death penalty for those who are anti-Israel. That's where my problem lies.
Yeah. We'll see where it all goes. But again, it's ultimately going to come down to the remnant, man, which is the posterity, the ones that founded this once great nation. They need to, you know, come together, rise. We're putting together the process. So we just need more and more of them to join forces with us.
So basically, we just need to get more of the word out for people to actually take the time to look into who they are and where their beginnings come from and everything else, and then hastily do this, not in a hastily manner, but hastily in time, because we're running out of it.
Right. Any last thoughts, Grant? And then we'll let you go, brother.
No, that's it, I guess, for me. So.
All right. Well, we'll be back on next Tuesday, and we'll cover some more stuff. So good night. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Alexander.
Thank you.
Grant, we'll see you later, Mr. CI or AI.
Good night.
Mr. AI.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Later, Mike. Give me a call tomorrow, Mike, if you get time.
All right, buddy.
All right, bud.
Bye.